My name is LaRae Kelsey, which it was LaRae Averett before I married, and I was born in November the 13th in the year 1932.
Where were you born?
I was born in Lovell, Wyoming, Bighorn County.
What were your parents' names?
My parents were Celeste Pearl Christensen and James Lafayette Averett.
And where were they from?
My mother was from Cowley, Wyoming, and my dad was from Lovell, Wyoming, both Bighorn County.
What did your parents do for a living?
They were farmers. They farmed a little bit in Lovell, Wyoming, on what they called turkey flats. It was all a sandy, loamy soil with apple orchards and a canal by, but it was a very small farm, so they moved to Cowley up in the northwest end of my grandfather's many farms, and they bought one. It was an 80-acre farm, and they raised sugar beets and grain and hay for years, and then they went a little further and decided to raise carrots and corn and pumpkin for the canning factory in Cowley.
Did they come from farming background families?
It was all farming.
Everybody, their parents, and their
Everybody
parents?
farmed because they migrated from Utah.
Okay.
They were pioneers, Mormon pioneers.
What about your parents' religious background?
My parents were Mormons, and they were from large families. My grandfather's mother on the Christensen side was from Denmark, and she married a polygamist to get across the plains. And when she got to Utah, he gave me each farm, and she no longer was married to him. On my father's side, they did a lot of missionary work and temple work. They were temple builders, stonemasons. And my one grandfather was deaf, and he had one lame leg, but he carried mail from one end of the county into Park County for years, besides farming.
Do you know how your parents met?
My parents met at a dance. My dad had dated my mother's younger sister, and I think they met at a dance, and then he went to pick her up on a date, and she'd gone with somebody else, so he took my mother to the dance.
So how long did they know each other before they got married?
I don't know, but probably a couple of years. I don't think any longer.
And how many kids did they have?
There were only 3 of us.
Okay, what are their names?
3.5 years
and what
apart.
What order are you in?
I'm the middle child. My sister was Pearl, and my other sibling was Cecil, a boy. We were all 3.5 years apart.
And growing up, what's your earliest childhood memory?
I was 3 years old when my little brother was born, and I can remember my mother holding him in the rocking chair.
Do you remember anything about your grandparents? Were they around?
Yes, I grew up with the both grandparents, the Christensens and the Averts.
What were your parents' political beliefs? Do you know?
Yes, they were straight Republican.
Very conservative?
Yes, they were very conservative. My dad did not like Delano Roosevelt at all. And I remember the Hoover days, and that's when I was born in 32, and he didn't like what FDR did when he came in.
In general, did your parents get along?
Well, yes. They had a lot of fun together. My dad was never that demanding of my mom. He didn't want her working too hard in the farm.
So he's a nice farmer.
Yes, he's a very nice farmer. Everybody liked him.
I liked him. I remember him.
Yeah.
How did you get along with your siblings growing up?
We got along really well. I don't remember of us ever fighting. We weren't allowed to fight. We weren't allowed to jangle at the table or argue. We just didn't do it. We were good friends and stuck up for one another anytime we were out in public.
Describe the house that you grew up in your bedroom, if you remember it.
Our house was a old log house, and it was chinked. There was no electricity. I remember gathering wood chips and coal after school and feeding the chickens, but the house was cold in the winter, but we had plenty of fuel and bedding, so we didn't suffer any cold. And I remember the kerosene lamps. Then soon after we got electricity and propane, a big 500-gallon tank of propane to keep us warm. Then my dad had a man by the name of LaFollette come from Powell, Wyoming to stucco the house. So it was a nice old farmhouse with a large kitchen and a cistern underneath the kitchen floor. It was concrete, and then we put a pump in the kitchen to pump the water up. And we thought that was pretty modern. Then we got a propane gas stove and a refrigerator and a big table.
How big was the house? So your house today is probably, 13, 14, 1,500 square feet?
It wasn't really very big. I thought it was. The kitchen was a big, long kitchen. And then my parents' bedroom probably 8 by 10, and mine might have been 8 by 12, 9 by 12. It was a little bigger.
Did you each have your own room?
And then my little brother had just a little tiny room with a great big crib that we took the iron sides off of it, and it looked like a day bed. And my bedroom had a closet in, just a portable closet. My mom made a dressing table out of orange crates with a nice wooden top varnished, and then a big round mirror on the top, so that with the orange crates it gave me a shelf on each side, and then we had a nice gathered curtain around it to hide the crates.
Did you have a closet?
It was a portable closet we ordered from Montgomery Wart's. It was like a paper closet.
Yeah.
She was going to build one, but she ordered me one.
And then you had a nice bed?
Always had a nice bed with a white chenille spread over the top, and a crocheted and embroidered pillow slips that she made, and sometimes I embroidered on the pillow slips. And they were all really pretty. We were not allowed to sit and play on our bed, only at nighttime when we got ready to go to bed, after we washed our feet and got cleaned up to go to bed. We even had to brush our hair. Then we could get on our bed and read or whatever. But it was not a plaything ever. It was to keep it very nice.
Were your parents strict?
Yeah, they were strict, but we didn't know any better.
I mean, they were strict but fun?
Oh, they were a lot of fun.
Yeah.
They were a lot of fun, and I remember we'd, in the summer, we could open the windows. We had screens, and we could hear all the bats outside and the frogs in the ponds and all kinds of noise outside. But it was, and the ditch went by, and it was soft, and we could visit. But when it was time to go to sleep, they told us. We went to sleep. There was no more talking.
Did you guys grow up in a religious household?
No. We had the blessing, but they didn't want to go to town back and forth, because when first thing I remember, we didn't have a car. We had to go to town in a wagon with a horse, not very often. And then we had a Model A or a Model T, and you cranked it, and we'd pile in that, and it wouldn't go very fast. Then pretty soon my dad got a 36 Chevy, and then that was pretty nice. We did have a car to go places then, so we could go to church And we went to all the church activities and all the school activities.
So it wasn't non-religious by belief; it was non-religious by convenience.
It was, yeah, because we lived out of town, probably close to 5 miles.
But as you grew
on
up,
a dirt road, and you'd get stuck in the winter if you weren't careful, and it was cold.
But as you grew up, you got more active and started going to more and more activities.
Yeah, when I got into mutual, but not too often. We just weren't allowed to waste money on gas, and we'd have the gas delivered to the farm. The big old tanker come out and filled our barrels, and then we had to siphon the gas out to fill the car. And I remember sucking gas through that hose to fill the car. That's how I got to go.
What about school? How did you get to school?
Well, we had a bus. The bus always came around and got us, and he picked me up all three of us at 20 after 8. And the time we got to school, it was about 10 to 9 or so. And then we got out of school at 4. 10 after 4, the bus driver left. And if you weren't out to get in that bus, he did leave you and you walked. So if you had
how far away did you live?
Well, it took me an hour to walk, and I walked a lot. Even after primary, if I decided to stay in town, it wasn't too cold. Sometimes it froze my feet going home. It'd be that cold. But it'd take me a full hour to walk.
How old were you when you first went to school?
5.
Like kindergarten?
First grade.
First grade?
Mm-hmm.
Did you like your school?
I didn't know any better.
Yeah.
I didn't even know how to spell my name. I didn't know how to print, didn't know how to read, didn't know how to color. Didn't really know anything
But
much.
you told me once you were young when you went in, right? You were younger than the rest.
I was really young, and I was very immature. I was really little, and I was kind of sickly and skinny, and I got tired. I'd go to sleep in the afternoon. I went to sleep on the bus every day. They'd have to wake me up to get me off. So I was a year too early going to school. That was the story.
And we'll talk about your school in a minute. We're going to go back to your parents. What was you? So you were born in 1932.
Yes,
and that was the Great Depression.
it was.
Was your family or your parents doing during those years? The next 6 years or so during the rest of the Depression.
I never felt like we were ever poor. My mom would say, "Well, we're kind of poor." And I never felt like that. We had a cellar full of food. We had meat that was cured in the cellar. I could take eggs to school. I took them on the bus. And I'd take usually about 6 or 7 dozen. And I'd take them to the old store, mercantile store, and trade them for cloth or shoes or a jacket or something. Just whatever I wanted. My mom would give me the eggs, and they were mine to buy what I wanted to buy or what I needed. If I needed a new dress, I could go into Man's store, and they always had some cloth, some material to sew, and they had thread and just whatever, shovels, and you never knew. There was everything in that store.
So you always had food, you always had clothes, you always had the basics, but did you know that you were poor, or
No.
everybody was like that?
No, I didn't think we were poor. I thought we looked good in my coat. I never had a new coat till I was in high school, and I made it. But my old coats, I didn't know they were old. They were wool. And they were my mother's sister's coats that wore out. She washed the wool, took them apart, washed the wool, and made me a new coat. The inside of that coat was the outside of my new coat. And it looked really pretty. So I thought it was a new coat, and I looked really nice. And I had a new pair of patent leather shoes for Christmas. Didn't get Christmas. It was candy and all that stuff. No gifts. You'd have a new dress and new shoes for the program. And oranges, apples, nuts, and candy. That was Christmas.
Did you guys have chores growing up?
Yeah.
What kind of chores?
Not too many. We had to get the coal, chips of wood and coal, buckets of coal to come in the house. And maybe go out and gather the eggs. There weren't a lot of them. We didn't have a lot of chickens. And gather the eggs. And if we had a few bum lambs, we had to feed the bum lambs with some bottles we collected, just 2-quart bottles. And,
So you had household chores and farm chores.
I didn't do much in the house.
No.
My mom did. There wasn't a whole lot to do because we didn't mess up nothing. We didn't have toys. Our kids have toys. We played checkers, card games, and we sang. We could play the radio, but not too long. It had a battery, just a few programs after school. And I played the organ all the time when I was a little kid, a pedal organ. That's what we did, or go outside and play kick the can. We didn't mess the house, and you didn't dirty the dishes.
Did your mom teach you how to cook?
Yeah, we had to can. We had to help with the garden. Not too bad, because but the canning, we had to cut the ends off the green beans and cut them up in short pieces and put them in the bottles for canning. And the peas, we had to pod the peas and take the pods out the pigs, and we had to. And the tomatoes, we had to put them in the boiling water and peel them and put them in jars. Peaches, and we helped can.
To kind of wrap up your childhood, what are some fun activities you remember doing with your family, as a family?
Oh, well, every Saturday night they liked to dance, and they liked movies. So when we got our work done, we had to work Saturday, and we'd go to the canal and take our bath there and wash our hair and dry it. And then we'd go to town. And my dad would go to the pool hall, play cards long enough to come out in the car and give us 12 cents for the movie and 25 cents for the dance. But we waited out in the car with Mama, and she'd visit with people on the street, and that's what he did. And then...
was there ever a time he didn't come out with 12 cents?
Oh, no.
He always did.
Oh, yeah, he came out. That's what he did. That way he didn't have to borrow money or worry about money. He'd just go in there, and they called him Red Deck, but he'd go in and play cards.
Why'd they call him Red Deck? He preferred a red deck?
I'd call for a red deck if you thought somebody's cheating. You'd throw the black deck across the floor, and he'd say Red Deck, and they'd bring him a red deck, and cards were serious. But that's what he did for Saturday night, and then everybody went to dance. After the show was over, about 9:30, everybody went down to the old VFW building, and they had a hop and dance with a piano, an accordion, and a sax and a drum. And they always had somebody sing a song or whatever, and you danced jitterbug and waltzes, foxtrots, Black Hawk waltz and Virginia reels, and maybe a square dance, all kinds. And then afterwards you went home, or if you wanted to, you could invite somebody home to have a turkey sandwich and hot chocolate, or you'd go to somebody else's. Usually everybody just went home. But they danced. Everybody danced. And we looked forward to Saturday night, and that's what we did.
What about vacations?
Oh, we didn't ever take... My dad never left the state of Wyoming until my mother had leukemia in 1964. He was born in 1907.
So your whole childhood, you never left Wyoming, or at least in the 30s and the 40s when you were young?
No.
Everybody just stayed
Home, and you'd go to the park every summer. You always knew if you got
Which
the hay,
park?
the Yellowstone. You hurried and got the hay up. And then you put the calf in with the cow, so you didn't have to worry about her. You turned the chickens out. Then you'd have, if you had pigs or something, you'd turn the water, you'd build the pig pen out a little bit over the water so they'd have water. And then you'd have somebody come over and check every night to make sure the animals were doing okay, see. But you had to get that hay crop done. You go to the park and stay for a week, and you fished and ate all the fish you could, and have picnics in the cabins. And go out. They
But
had
Yellowstone
boats.
Park's pretty fun, and it wasn't that far away, correct?
Oh, it took you all day to get there, and the first time I went, the car boiled all the way up the mountain. It was dirt, winding. Then they started paving, and then it was never this nice. I mean, all the cars were boiling up Sylvan Pass. But then if we didn't go to the park, we went to the Bighorns the other way, because we lived around mountains. And we'd make root beer for 2 weeks, homemade root beer. And then we'd take a big pot of beans and potatoes, potato salad, and cake, and everybody did everything at home, took it up there, and then we had hot dogs and hamburgers, and we went to Five Springs. Well, it's a waterfall with pure water, and you could take water home. You could take your jugs of water home because it was so pure. And that was a fun picnic, and we'd just stay a day, maybe overnight once. But that's if we couldn't go to the park.
But most of the time you just stayed near town
And then we went to Lovell Day and Cowley Day because they had rodeos. And then once in a while we go to Friar Mountain and pick choke cherries. And you'd have to stand on your car to get the choke cherries. They're a berry, but they have a seed in them, and they grow like trees. And they are so good. Better than black currants for jelly and jam. And you get all you could. But that wasn't up the mountain, it's below the mountain. But it was, the creek, Prior Creek was pure too, the water. And we'd picnic there. And we'd have homemade root beer and whatever.
How did you guys celebrate birthdays?
Didn't worry about them. Happy birthday.
Cake?
I had a party when I was 15 years old. My dad went to town and picked up all the 14 other kids in one car, but he had to take 3 trips or 2. And then he went back to town and got a 2.5-gallon cooker full of ice cream, galvanized cooker full of ice cream. And my mom baked me a big birthday cake. And we just had a party, and she made some Kool-Aid with pineapple juice and whatever she put in it. That was my birthday. We didn't get gifts. We didn't think about it.
What about Thanksgiving? How did you celebrate Thanksgiving?
Thanksgiving was nice. We went to somebody's house, usually Grandma's, and the kids had to stay outside, and the ice was 2 inches thick by then, so you could take your clamp skates and skate on the pond while the parents were inside fixing the dinner. The turkeys were all fixed, but they had to fix the big table in a small kitchen with white tablecloths. They fixed it nice. The adults all ate first. The kids didn't come in. Then when the adults ate, they did all the dishes, cleaned up everything, and you had a brand new table with white tablecloths. The kids all came in and ate. Then everybody had pie and tea, and
Was it all the relatives that were around all went to Grandma's house?
Yeah.
What about Christmas?
Same thing. Christmas Eve we went to the Averts in Lovell, got popcorn balls and candy, and Grandma, she went all year long giving everybody a gift, and it might be a 5-cent hanky, because that's what they cost. You didn't get much, but everybody got something, maybe a book or a ball, and we had a lot of fun. It was popcorn balls and hardtack candy and nuts galore and apples, because they had apple orchards. Christmas Day we went to the Christensons, and it was like the Thanksgiving. Then we got to be such a big family we had to rent a hall. And we'd rent a hall with a big kitchen, and it was...
And that's as you got older, like teenage years and early adulthood?
In high school.
High school?
Yeah, the kids got too big, and there was too many, and those houses couldn't hold 40 people. And then you just did all the dishes, cleaned everything up like you never even were there.
Overall, did you say you liked your childhood?
Oh, yeah.
It's
I had
fun.
a really good childhood. I left a few summers. I think I was 9 or 10 one year. I went over to Crystal Creek, and helped thin beets. And got pretty homesick. Was over there 2 weeks with
Who'd you stay with over there?
the greatest cowboy in the world. Andy Gifford was a true cowboy.
And he was related to you?
No.
Oh,
He
a
just
friend?
needed, he was a friend of my Uncle George. He was a real cowboy, too. I mean, they were cowboys. And he had a nice ranch, but he grew sugar beets, and he needed some kids to come and thin his beets, and he didn't have to hurry. So the neighbor kids all went over there. And we were there 2 weeks, and I was the youngest. I think the oldest one was our niece. She's alive. She's 5 years older. We worked hard.
Did you get to
Kids.
keep the money, or did you give it to your parents?
Oh, no. The money's always ours.
Huh?
I think that I earned $18 in 2 weeks and went to Billings Fair and spent 10 of it, and then the rest went for school clothes. But I wanted to go. They took us to town in old truck on Saturday night, and I saw my folks. Wanted to go home, but I never asked, and that was it. You knew you weren't going home. And then when I was 12, I went to Byron to see A. Lewis, as he was the biggest sheep man in Wyoming at that time. And he had farms all over with people caring for him. And he needed somebody, the farmer needed somebody to come and hoe his beets. So the same crew, I was a little bit older, went over, and I remember eating their apples all night long. I was eating green apples, and we were hoeing beets and stayed there, but I didn't like the food there because she was Belgian, and she wasn't that old, but she'd fix kidneys and liver and brains, and I couldn't eat it. None of us could eat it. Everything else was garden, and it was good. We could eat it, but food didn't impress me anyway. But she always had lots of apple pies and plum pie, I think, apple pies, and and potatoes and good stuff. But I couldn't eat that meat. I don't like meat anyway. But
So is there anything else from your early childhood, up until maybe high school, when you're elementary school, junior high, if you guys had junior high? Is there any stories or any fond memories? Anything in particular that comes to mind?
yeah, when I was really little, I was a snowflake in Christmas program. And
Was this at church or school?
it was school, and my mom made me this pretty snowflake costume, like a fairy. It was all white net and had white stockings and black patent leather shoes, and she fixed me really pretty. And it was muddy and rainy, going out the door, and some snow on the ground. And my dad picked me up to take me out the car, and I smelled like onions. I ate onions, and he was just furious. He didn't say much, but he was just really mad because I looked like a cute little snowflake, smelled like onion. But and I just remember I didn't know why he wanted to be that way, But he was good.
Did you ever get into any trouble as a kid? Like
No.
real trouble?
No.
No police coming down to your guys' house to talk to you about you or
no.
Uncle Cecil?
No, my mom had let me take the car. I think the first time I took the car to town, I maybe was 14, and she told me to drive 15 miles an hour, no more, in that 36 Chevy. A 36 Chevy, I think, or 41 Chevy. I don't know. It's old. But she taught me stick shift, and I had to go up some hills and then hit the highway, and she told me 15 miles an hour all the way, and I did. I drove, and of course, it probably took me an hour to go to town and come back, and I came back. But she was really good to let me, but she was a terrible driver. She'd go around our yard like this to get out to the road, And you didn't know if she was going to hit the haystack or the barn or what. Chug, chug, chug. So she didn't know if we could drive well enough.
A couple more questions about your, early childhood. Describe the community you grew up in. Was it mostly like a Mormon community? I understand it's mostly farmers.
It's all Mormon.
Yeah.
And they were busy. They had all kinds of things going. Relief Society dinners. You had big church dinners. And the men even helped do the dishes and serve. And those are big tables. You sat down and ate with white tablecloths and white linen napkins, glasses of water. You had turkey or ham.
Is it similar to some of the banquets they have today?
All the time. You had them all the time. And pies and ice cream. You had socials. Yeah, that's what they did to keep you busy. For fun, you always ate and did it. And big programs. You went to the prom. Everybody went to the proms. The big formal dances. Everybody went.
Didn't matter what age you were?
No.
The whole family went?
Little kids, no. Not at the formal dances. The little kids couldn't go.
But the adults would go?
But the high school kids go. 8th graders,
Yeah.
And the adults, yeah, because kids were all there. Oh, yeah. And if you had a date, you filled one car.
So you didn't grow up in town, and you didn't particularly grow up in a neighborhood. You guys were kind of out on the 80-acre farm, correct?
Yeah.
And kind of had your farmhouse in a long road, I'm picturing, that goes out to the main road that leads into town.
Yeah, but there were farmhouses all the way out. My grandma even lived on dirt road on the way out, but if I walked home from school, I didn't stop there. Because I didn't know if my grandpa would like it or not. He was very strict. And he couldn't use his phone. So you just head out and you'd go home. It's like a right angle. It's like this.
Yeah.
And there were...
So there wasn't a lot of...
There weren't
you
a lot
wouldn't
of
see
houses.
A lot of people or houses.
When I walked home alone.
And then all the shopping you guys did was in town.
Yeah.
And then you guys did order things out of catalogs, right?
Mm-hmm. Sometimes.
That was back then.
We made our own
Wars.
clothes, except the men's clothes. Never made the men's clothes. We made our own.
What was the largest town or city you remember visiting when you were young?
Lovell.
Cody. Was it bigger than Cody?
We didn't go to Cody. Ever. You never went to Cody.
So all through, till you were in high school, maybe, or even high school, Lovell was it?
I'd go to Grable once in a while and see my aunt and uncle.
But Lovell was bigger.
Lovell was bigger than even... Yeah, I don't know if it was bigger than Powell, but Lovell was a going town. It was 2 main streets full of nice businesses.
How many
really
people
nice.
lived in Lovell at the time? Do you know?
Yeah, about 3,500 people.
We're going to talk about your school for a while. I know we touched on it a little bit. I know you told me one time you didn't like your teacher. Did you have the same teacher growing up?
No, I had one teacher I didn't like the 3rd grade.
But you had a new teacher every year?
Every year I had a new teacher. And they all stayed there and taught for years. And most of them were old maids till they got married. And then one never married, the 5th grade teacher, and I liked her. She's a little short, round woman.
Tell me the story about the 3rd grade teacher.
She just really thought she was peaches and cream. She was one of Bettina's friends. And she just kind of ignored me, and she's passed me. I think really I was a failure. If I remember right, I couldn't really get her arithmetic. The 1st grade I didn't do too good, but I did learn to read and print. I did, and learn to tell time and stuff. And I passed okay. In the 2nd grade, I went really well. Phonics and spelling did really well. 3rd grade, I couldn't do the arithmetic very well. And she totally wasn't, just ignored. Just didn't like her. I was scared of her anyway. She wasn't mean. She just wasn't there for me. And then I liked...
But all your other teachers you liked fairly well and got along with. And...
Oh, yeah. I got along with her because I was scared of her.
How big was your school? Was it a big schoolhouse?
120, maybe. I know Hot Lunch was about 102 people. Grade school and high school.
How big was the building? Was it just one building?
Uh-huh.
And
Big
it had,
rock building.
And had all the grades in it?
That had 8 grades in the one. And the rooms were good size because they held about 15 people in each grade.
So about, like you said, about 100 kids.
Well, that was high school too.
Oh, okay.
And then you went over to the high school building, another building, which used to be called the Bighorn Academy, BHA, where my mother became a school teacher.
What was your favorite subject in school?
I liked spelling.
Who was your favorite teacher in school?
I liked Mrs. Condi, my Spanish teacher in high school. In grade school, I liked my 4th grade teacher, my 2nd grade teacher.
Who were your friends at school?
My best friend was Velma Wilson, and she was little, and she had an August birthday. She wasn't a lot older than I am, but she was genius. In high school, they rated her as a genius in the state. She's always smart, and she read, and just from a smart family. But her mother gave her books all the time.
Did you just see your friends from school during school, and maybe on the weekends sometimes when the families are out?
Yeah.
You guys didn't hang out like kids do today?
Well, Velma did from the 6th grade on through high school. She wouldn't go home. She'd come about live with me.
But before that, when...
No, we went home and we played at school. And then my farm neighbors, they had kids. The cousins over this hill, cousins over this hill. That was it. That's who we played
And
with.
your brother and your sister.
And my brother and my sister. And I didn't play much with them. You know, we did singing and playing games and stuff. But 3.5 years apart's kind of a little bit.
That you were each 3.5 years apart, roughly? Yeah. So if there was other kids your age around, you'd probably play with them, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember any teasing or bullying growing up?
No.
Kids were nice?
Yeah, I never ever worried about that.
Good.
Of course, they didn't get away with it either. They would never get away with it. Because you wouldn't even do it in your home. You wouldn't do it in your home.
We might have touched on this a little bit. What did you do on your spare time? Like, besides homework, besides chores, what are some of the things you did playing with the neighbor kids or your brothers and your sister?
Rode horses. Or go, in the summer, go with the canal and swim, or out in the ditch and swim. But I always had Sammy, a little Shetland, and we...
Oh, that's a good question. What pets did you have growing up?
I had a little dog named Sport, and a little black dog. And every time you went in the door, he'd nip on your heels. He wasn't allowed to come in. But he died. He got shot down the road. Jared Dixon was herding his band of sheep. We bought that farm eventually. But Sport, I was on Sammy, my Shetland, coming down the little path by the ditch. And the ditch was on this side, and in the path where I was riding in a fence. He went under the fence where the band of sheep was. They were over in here. But he shot him. So I carried him home. And he lived most of the night. But before he died, my mom told me to go back and ask Jared if he'd come and kill him. And he wouldn't. He went home. So the little dog suffered all night, and my dad came home, and I think he died right then.
So this guy, Dixon, shot your dog because he thought he was going to mess with the sheep?
Well, they did. They had trouble with dogs.
So he shot him, but then he wouldn't come over to put him out of his misery.
It's just a little thing like that. Yeah. And we cried all night, everybody, because he was just, that was terrible.
Even though he nipped at you, you guys still loved him, right?
Oh, yeah. He...
Did you have any hobbies?
Yeah, I played the guitar all the time.
Starting at what age?
Probably 9. I played the mandolin first. my Aunt Leon let me have Sammy, and she let me have Uncle Ray's mandolin. I didn't know she'd come back and get it, but she loaned it instead of gave it, and it was shaped like a pelican bill. My mom sent away to the catalog and got me a book, and we learned chords on that mandolin.
And that's
And
where
then-
you learned how to play guitar, right? That was your basis.
Yeah, well, my neighbor, Armise, played a guitar, and her cousin Viola lived with her, Iola, and they sang in programs all the time. So they'd come down to my house, and we'd sit on the doorstep at night, and I'd play my mandolin, and they'd play the guitar and sing, and we'd try to follow Grand Ole Opry. That's when it first started.
And how old were you when you
I
did
was
it?
a little kid, maybe 9, and we were playing good. And well, I wanted a guitar, and I kept asking for a guitar. No, well, Vic played the guitar, my uncle, really well, and my granddad did, Christensen. He played Spanish Fandango, and I mean the guy could. They were plinkers. They plunked and plinked and whatever, and they were guitarists. So I wanted a guitar, and finally we went to Billings for something, and my dad went to the music store and bought me a guitar for $25. And we sat in the hotel, and I sat on a table and played for my dad and mother and their friends that went to Billings with us. And I entertained, and there, of course, people down the hall were hearing this old kid play and sing, and I was doing Eddie Arnold's songs at that time, and it was pretty fun.
And $25 was a lot back then, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I bet you kept that guitar and took good care of it, right?
I took good care of it, and I didn't have a case. My mom made me a case out of a canvas sack or something, put a drawstring on it, and that's the way I carried it. And I cleaned it and polished it and restrung it when it needed it. And I played and sang in programs all the time. Not one
So
song.
starting at 7, 8, 9
About
years
10
old.
years old.
10 years old, you started
That's pretty
like
good.
performing and
Yeah.
and all through up until adulthood. I
In
know
high
that, right?
school. Well, and after I was married, they called me and
Yeah.
even went to high school programs.
And you like doing it.
Oh, yeah. I wasn't afraid. I really liked to do it. Yeah. And then after I was married, we started a band. The guys were better than I because I never learned to do the bar chords and to play lead. I was their singer and their backup. And then we'd have people from out of town, like a fiddler. I was playing in a nightclub one night, and he saw me, this fiddler, state fiddler, and he kept watching me. So I turned my mic around so he could see me. I was on a platform. There was a pianist, another guitar, and I didn't know he was a fiddler, state fiddler. But the next weekend, Saturday night, I didn't have anybody to accompany him, so he called me up and asked me if I'd come down. So I went down and played with him for about 4 hours, and we played the orange, what do you call it? No, the fast fiddler song. And, yeah. And they did. They called me several times.
Growing up, what did you want to be? You know how little kids want to be
I wanted a
policemen?
barber. I wanted to be a barber. But I took Spanish, which was Mexican. And I wanted to go to Mexico with my teacher because she took her son, and she invited 2 others to go, and I was one of them, to go to Mexico City, live with the family for 6 weeks. But my folks, I didn't dare ask.
That was a big trip back then.
You didn't dare even ask. I
Yeah.
mentioned it, but I didn't dare ask, and there was no response.
No.
There was no money for me to go. They weren't going to do it.
Anything else about your early childhood, elementary school, friends, growing up? Any stories, anything before we start talking about your teenage years?
Well, I remember Donna Beale coming over. She was Donna Lucart then. She was part Indian. I didn't realize she was Indian, but she was my neighbor. And she rode horse all the time like an Indian, flat, bareback. And she came over all the time, and we'd ride, and we'd swim in the canal at night, and with her dog. And then sometimes we'd get on our big old workhorse called Queen, and I'd ride backwards. She was sway back and probably weighed, I think she probably weighed 2,000 pounds. And she'd get that thing on a gallop, and I'd be riding on the back end hanging on to her tail. And we'd laugh and laugh. You couldn't fall off.
Were you guys
of her.
allowed to do that?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Just get on and go. We didn't have saddles. So we were really good horseback riders. We did. We rode bareback, but most of the time we'd put a rug or something because we'd ride and the horse got sweaty and it bothers your legs, you know. So we learned to, she could swing on better than I could. But yeah, we were really good horseback riders.
What about, because I'm doing the math in my head, you would have been right around 8 years old, 9 years old, up till 13 when World War II. And how did that affect you or your family or your community?
Well, tires were on the black market, but we could have tires anytime we wanted. And my dad grew sugar beets, so we could have all the sugar stamps we wanted. So we were allotted sugar stamps.
What's that?
Well, there's shortage of sugar, so everybody was allotted shoe stamps, sugar stamps.
Got it. To buy.
And if you didn't have enough, you didn't have them. And shoe stamps. We were allotted everything we needed.
So nothing changed
We
as
didn't,
far as, yeah.
But in cities, it was really bad.
And did you guys ever feel the effects of that or hear stories, or was it after the fact that you found all that out?
Well, the thing of it is, when the men went to war, I was in my teens, and my dad didn't go. I don't know why he was 4F, but he didn't go. He farmed and worked in the oil fields. But all the young men, like my sister's friends, they joined the Navy and the Army when they were like 16, and all the men up to 40 years old were drafted. And they didn't come back. If they were in the CBs or submarines, they didn't come back. And they tried not to send brothers together. They'd put them in different places. And some were blinded, some lost their limbs.
So almost every young man from 16 to 40 who was single and
they had to go.
Didn't have farms and things, they had to go.
And the women had to do the farming.
Yeah.
They rode the tractors and they worked in the sugar factories.
Didn't you tell me a story once about German prisoners?
Yeah, well, my dad used to take his truck and go to Deaver and get the German prisoners, and they had a guard, and they came down and did the beats.
On your farm?
On our farms. And he'd go get them, and then he'd take them home at night. And there was always a ditch of water on this end of the roads, and this end. They loved to come because they had salami sandwiches every day, but my mom had sometimes bread and milk and honey that she'd give to them. And we had the Germans for, I think, thinning and hoeing. I don't think we had them for harvesting.
Did you ever interact with them?
No.
No, it was stay
You
away
mind
from
your
them.
your own business.
Yeah, they were prisoners, right?
They were prisoners, and they were good, but they knew there was a guard there, and they didn't want to run away.
Right.
But one got a little hostile to my dad, and he pointed to him to get out of his way, and he was fine. He was fine. I think my dad didn't understand what he was trying to tell him. And then we had the Japanese prisoners at Hart Mountain, so he'd go up and get it was one or the other, I don't remember which. But he'd get the Japanese, and they had Korean artists. They had really talented people, and they just loved it. They didn't want to go home. The one Korean didn't want to go home. He loved that farming.
It's weird how World War II affected you in northern Wyoming, huh?
Oh, yeah, the prisoners were there. And then Dr. Oda was a veterinarian. And his parents and family were from Chicago. And very influential people. I mean, they were good people. But they rounded them up and sent them to San Francisco as prisoners of war. They had to leave everything. But Dakota was protected in Lovell because he had so many friends.
This is the Japanese doctor.
Yeah.
And then,
And he didn't say a word. He and his family were very young and very quiet. And I don't even think he had all of his kids and maybe 2 little girls. They were our neighbors after I was married. But
he didn't go anyway.
No. But we needed a vet.
Right.
We really needed a vet because we had cattle ranchers and we needed them for our turkeys. They were dying. They had sticks in their gizzards. And I mean, he didn't go. And everybody protected him. But then the war got over and things settled down. But yeah, I had a lot of family.
So besides a Japanese vet and your half Indian friend, maybe your Spanish teacher was Mexican.
No,
she wasn't. Was there any other people of other nationalities or colors?
Yes, the Mays lived across the street from us. Arlene Mays and I grew up together. They were a Mexican family. I loved that family. And they had all 4 sons eventually were in the service. Raymond was my very favorite. He was, I think he was Army. I was thinking Marine. He was Army. But he was in Guam, Philippines. I had a picture of him.
And did he come home?
He came home. He sure did. And Billy was in the Navy. Arthur was in the Army. The oldest one, Ernest, I think, was in the Army
But
too.
you grew up with them?
No, just her and Arthur.
Well, I mean the family.
Babies,
The family. You grew up
one.
with that family around.
I grew up with the old people, and he was a Basque, and the mother was a Navajo Indian, but the kids were Mexican. That's what did it.
But you didn't have any exposure. I mean, there was no other than that. It was pretty white, pretty Mormon.
No, they had a Mexican town level. They
They
were laborers, and they were the labor for the sugar company, and then they had Marijuana Mary that lived down in Keene, where Grandpa lived. And she'd go up and down the railroad tracks every day, pulling her wagon, goonier and goon, and the train finally hit her and killed her.
Now, why was she called that?
Marijuana Mary?
Yeah.
She's probably growing marijuana.
Oh. Hey, just curious.
I felt bad when she died, because I think she probably stepped in front of the train. She didn't have any friends. But she'd go from Kane. And that Mexican town, they got in so many fights, they finally cleared it out. And the people saved their money, and a lot of them bought little farms in Tapal and Lovell. So yeah, I was around Mexicans. No blacks, only Gandhi dancers.
Other than that, anything else about your childhood? We'll move on to your teenage years.
Just normal kids going to dances and parties and sleigh rides, ice skating on the pond, taking your hot chocolate and chili over and building a fire. But it was fun. We had a lot of fun.
How did you guys get the news from the world, from bigger cities? Was it newspaper and radio?
The Denver Post came out every Saturday, and we bought the Denver Post, a real thick paper full of funny papers we called comics. And
you get the comics, and your dad and your mom would take the news, and so it was a once a week thing. You guys would catch up on
the Billings Gazette came out every day, and my granddad went to town every day to get the Billings Gazette. And then we listened to the radio, Carlton Bourne, and he didn't ever read a script. He was told, and he was 15 minutes every day, and he remembered everything he was told. The only one I've ever heard of in my life that didn't read a script. He just memorized it.
And that was your town's connection to the outside of the area, right?
And then when you went to a movie, they showed the news on that movie. well, maybe the movie. We saw mostly new movies on Saturday night, Roy Rogers, but you had the news and the comedies like Mickey Mouse or Buzz Bunny.
Before the movie played, right?
And the news and then the movie, yeah. So we got plenty of news. And then the radio in Billings, KSL, gave you news 5 o'clock and 10 o'clock every night. So, yeah.
When you became a teenager, as most teenagers do, did you have problems with your parents ever?
No, I didn't.
Your brothers or your sister?
No, I didn't, because everywhere I went, they were there somewhere. I started dating when I was 14. Steady with the basketball star. He was my neighbor, Ben Cousins. And he had a car. So everywhere we went, we had 2 other couples with us. Everybody piled in. So if we had a date, we'd go pick up somebody else. You know,
it was always couples. It was
you had to
double.
make use of your cars, and yeah, and there wasn't much money. You didn't go have hamburgers and drinks or anything. You went to the movie and the dance. That's what you did.
And there was always a movie and a dance on a Friday or
Saturday night.
Oh, it was always Saturday night.
Saturday night, and you'd go to Lovell, which was nice. Yeah.
Anything change about school when you became a teenager and into your high school?
No, those schools were the same.
It's just a different building, same kids?
It was, yeah, the grade school building. You just moved over to the high school building and just looked forward to being able to get to do this and that. Yeah.
Was it okay for girls to succeed in school back then?
Yes. I tried out for triple trio, which my sister had been in. That's 9 girls, and it's an honor to be in that. There's 3 sopranos, 3 seconds, and 3 altos, and you have to try out. And I got in, and I got to have a school sweater, and the only girls that ever got a school honor sweater were members of the triple trio.
Was that like a Letterman's jacket?
It's
for
a
girls?
Letterman's jacket, and you had a music lyre on the front, and then you could have stripes for the years you were in. And I had 3 because 4 was too many. I don't remember.
Did you travel?
Yes,
in
we
the
went
triple
from
trio?
town to town and traveled.
For competitions
and sang.
or for...
We didn't, no competitions. We went to, like they do, I don't remember what you call them now.
Just like pageants or talent shows and things like that?
No, it was for the school. All the schools competed. They didn't. I guess you called it a competition. The bands went, and the chorus went, and the triple trio, and the soloists.
So it was a big music
and
competition.
They graded them. You were graded, and we took. We always got an A. We always did. Us 9 girls got an A, and when the senior graduated, then they took the next one that tried out. She stayed. You stay in. Once you're in, you're in. But you better be there after school every night to practice. That's why I walked home every day after school. So when I walked home, the bus was coming back in.
From dropping everybody else
Yeah.
off at your house, right?
Yeah.
So that was a good time in your life?
Oh, yeah, and we'd wear formals, and we had to dress up. You had to really dress up. You had to look nice and be nice. Yeah, we went to State. Yeah.
Did you exceed at school? Excel at school?
Only in chorus, and I was good in band. I played a baritone.
So you were a musical.
When I was
kid.
in the 6th grade, I was in the high school band. When my sister was in the 4th grade, she was in the high school band. She played And my Aunt Wilma was in the high school band, trumpet. She's third chair, and my sister was solo. She was really good. And I was the only baritone. 6th grade on through high school.
Was it mostly self-taught, or a little bit of your mother, or was your dad musical too?
My dad tried to play a trumpet. He was okay. My mom could sing, but she wouldn't very often. She could sing, because she sang with her dad.
But you guys just kind of just picked it up and kind of were...
It was a musical family, because Mormons were then. You really wanted to excel in music, and Pearl was a really good singer. She sang alto, and then she directed choirs and things. And I kind of wanted to follow after her. And Cecil kind of followed. He played a trombone. He could sing. And he took tap dance in high school once. So we were all we all danced. We could dance every dance there was. You know, we were good dancers. And my parents taught ballroom dancing to the Mutual. And then they all over the basin, they all came together in formals. It's called the Golden Green Ball. So that's what I tried to do, was just keep going in music.
Were most of your friends at that time the musical kids,
Yeah.
the triple trio, the band kids?
Well, they didn't get in the triple trio. My one friend that was a neighbor, they were sheep ranchers. She lived way over in the field. Marion Tabbs, she played piano, and she sang too. And she's a great pianist. And she really was good. And if I had to sing a solo someplace, I took voice lessons.
Did you play any sports?
I can't play sports. I can't run. And when I wanted to play baseball, we'd play workup, baseball.
Just like pick up baseball?
Yeah, you bat, and when you're out, you start out in the field and you work up. Well, sometimes they'd play sides. There'd be 2 sides. I was the last one they'd ever pick, because I can't run, and I was a left-hand batter. I couldn't pitch, and we just laughed, because I knew I was the last one. Nobody even cared. You know, it was
just having fun.
It was fun. I didn't get my feelings hurt, because I can't run. I don't like playing sports. They played basketball. I hate basketball. I want to go watch everything. I don't want to I can't do it.
Did you have a job while you were a teenager?
Worked the canning factory a couple of summers. Sometimes 16-hour days. And we made 80 cents an hour, and then finally they had to pay us $1 because it was pure foods and drug. But when the trucks came in with all the corn and pumpkins and beans and peas whenever they were due to come in, we'd get them all canned up, then we had to wait. We'd go out on the lawns and lay there. And if we thought the trucks weren't going to come in from Red Lodge or wherever, then we'd hop my dad's old truck and we'd go to town and get cherries and wieners, didn't even cook them, and go back and lay on the lawn, eat apples, wait for the trucks. We were not paid for that.
Only paid while you worked, right?
You only got paid when you worked. Then finally the law came in and said we had to be paid. We had to be paid. Because we'd be gone 16 hours, and sometimes we were out there and weren't working, you know.
And you only worked a portion of the time, right?
Yeah, and then sometimes you'd work 16 hours straight. You know, they'd give you time off to go eat your lunch. You always took a sandwich and a can of soup, and you'd open your can of soup and eat it cold.
Is that where you learned your work ethic? I mean, because even you're 82, well, almost 83 now.
No, I'm 83, going on 84.
Oh, you're right. And I know you like to keep busy. And I know you've mentioned to me in the past, you know, if you stood around and didn't work, you didn't keep your job very long.
Oh, no.
Is that where you learned?
I learned in the fields because I knew those sugar beets had to be thinned. They had to be thinned. There's just a short time because they had to be cultivated. Then I knew they had to be hoed because they can't grow. The weeds will overtake them. We had such a short time to do it, and when I had somebody helping me and dragging along, I'd just get frantic and go back and do their work, help them catch up with me, keep us going.
But that was on your family farm, right?
Yeah.
So you learned that when you were a child.
Yes, I was a little girl.
And so when you became a teenager and an adult and you got a job, that always carried over with you.
Oh,
to
yeah,
keep
we
busy
did our
and
work.
Do the work.
And we didn't talk. I didn't. Now, when I worked on the belts, when the foods came through, picking tables, pulling the weeds out of the peas and stuff, Velma read books all the time. She'd give me a book report every shift. And she loved telling me these stories of books she read. And that's where I learned a lot of stories, because I didn't have books.
So she did all the reading, told you the story, and that's how you learned all the stories.
Uh-huh.
All the classics and all the
And she
books.
belonged to Book of the Month Club. Her
Yeah.
mother saw to it that she had, because she had 10 kids out on a farm. And that's what they did.
With the money that you made, did you get to keep it
Yeah.
growing up? So all the money you made ever, you didn't have to give it to your parents?
No, it was all mine.
But you had to pay for like your costumes and things like that?
No.
No?
No, that was mine. If I want a new dress, a new pair of shoes, or I want some new lipstick or nail polish, that money was mine.
And the same goes for Pearl and Cecil?
Yeah.
Everybody got to keep their own?
Oh, yeah, that was ours.
Was that common back then?
Yeah.
That
Well-
other kids, or depending on the situation?
No, they got to keep their. I bought a leather jacket one time. I saved my money and bought a leather jacket. And my sister, she worked for my granddad and on the tractor one whole summer and bought her a leather jacket, fringes and everything, because it was in style. Yeah, you keep all your money. That was yours.
Any before you met Grandpa, and then we'll start talking about that in a bit. Was there any funny stories about being a teenager? I mean, you said you started driving when you were 14. I'm sure you had to be 16 or so, but I'm sure all the kids back then were driving early. Is there any funny stories from when you're a teenager? You know how teenagers...
Yeah, there was. My senior year, they didn't want us to take senior day. Well, everybody did anyway, but one girl that year. But none of the kids' parents had let them have their car. So Velma and I walked out to my farm and asked my mom if we could take their new Packard. Beautiful green Packard. That was a beautiful car. She said yes. And I said, we're going to the mountain, Mama. And she says, that's okay. You can take it. And Kenny Banks drove it. I told her Kenny would be driving. And
So you piled a whole bunch of kids in the
so
car?
Velma and I took that car and went out to her farm. And she asked, they never had a car, but this Jeep, they finally bought a Jeep, wooden panel. That was kind of new, too. She asked her dad if she could take it, and he said yes. So her and I were the ones that furnished the cars for 14 kids, and we went to the mountain, and I don't remember why we had so much fun. It was so fun, I'll never forget it. And they've never forgotten it. The ones that are alive, they still remember LaRae Avert's car, that Packard, and Velma Wilson's Jeep.
What'd you guys do up there?
I don't even remember. We probably threw water on each other.
Hanging out?
Yeah, and climbing rocks and just, I don't even know if we had a picnic. We must have had something to eat. I don't know. But Marion Willis was the only one that stayed, and I think she was always sorry. Because we all got in trouble. The superintendent, the old goat, got up and told us all off and said the parents should never let you take the cars and all this and that. We didn't even care. Velma and I didn't care. We were out of school. We didn't care about him. He was superintendent and the coach and the ag teacher and old fuddy-duddy. And
They all kind of knew what was going on, right?
oh, nobody cared.
Yeah. I know that teenage years in the Mormon church, there's a lot of activities and things. Was there any fond memories of church activities as a teenager, or was it pretty like dances and road shows, and was it pretty
That's
typical?
all it was.
Yeah.
I didn't even go to Mutual very often. It was so boring. I'd drive in there, and Velma and I'd take the car and go to Lovell. Anybody else that wanted to go, we'd take them out of class because it was just boring. It wasn't even fun.
Were you guys growing up forced to go to church, or you kind of had free will?
We didn't even get to go to church most of the time.
Oh, okay. So it was, if you wanted to, you made it happen.
If you wanted to walk to town, you could.
Yeah. As far as rules growing up as a teenager, did your parents have, what was your curfew?
Didn't have a curfew.
Nothing, your parents weren't that strict. It was kind of, they just trusted you and you were responsible and came home by a certain
Well, nobody
time.
had drinks.
Yeah.
Nobody had alcohol. They weren't even drinking coffee. They sure didn't have cigarettes. Well, they could probably, but
not in your area, not in your neck of the woods.
my dad rolled his own once in a while, him and Vic and Roy, my uncles, if they had it, but they didn't always have it. Sit with a ditch bank and maybe roll one, but
So what year did you graduate high school?
50,
Class of 50? And how many kids were in your class?
15.
15.
Started with 15 and ended with 15.
And what did you do after high school, like right after? The summer after? Did you
I
work?
just stayed home that summer.
No dreams of college or anything like
I knew
that?
I wasn't going to college.
Oh.
Most of the kids just went off. They went different directions. They had families, some in California, and they'd go with their family, and
Did they
Velma
feel
went
like-
Salt Lake.
Did they feel like they had to get out of the small town and they wanted to do something bigger? Is that what most
There
of them...
was nothing for them.
Yeah. But you...
There was no place for me to go.
Yeah.
And my dad didn't really believe in college. Pro went because she got a scholarship in the concert
What did-
band.
oh, in the concert.
Yeah. But he didn't.
But Cecil was still home at that time, right? For another 3 years or so. And so you stayed home and you worked, I'm assuming? You got a job and...
No, I just stayed home. I got married
Oh,
September 1st.
so you graduated in May or June,
Yeah. I got
and you were
in
married September 1st. All right, so we're going to take a break and we'll talk about that in a second. Okay, so you graduated high school, and before we start talking about you meeting Grandpa, did you do a lot of dating in high school?
All the time.
Every Saturday night?
And sometimes during the week. Everybody dated.
And the dates, as you said before, were mostly movies and a dance, or a little. Was there going out to dinner? Or
No,
anything like
no dinners, no foods.
So
ever.
you ate dinner and then you went out.
I ain't worried about dinner.
No.
I didn't care about food anyway. I dated a guy, college guy. From they were sheep people too. Wow. He was about 6'3", the best dancer I ever dated. Good-looking guy, and he was in college. And he took me to formal dances, quite a few formal dances when I was a senior. Yeah, he'd come down from Powell, and I wrote him letters, and he'd write me a letter. Very nice guy.
And how old were you?
16. Yeah.
And he was about the same?
No. He was older. He was in college by
Oh.
19. And I dated a Marine one time. I was 15. He came home on furlough. I dated him while he was home, and then
No.
I never saw him again.
Were your parents okay with that?
Yeah.
It wasn't uncommon for
I was
not a really
15
old
and
guy,
he
but
was 19.
yeah, the late teen guys. It was okay
Yeah.
for them to date.
And I dated another man, Corning Man. I think he was sophomore or junior in college, and I was 16. Yeah.
And it was common that all the girls would date the older guys, or
Nobody
could date,
ca- no,
could date.
Yeah, nobody thought anything about it. But I didn't date him a long time. He went back to university and double dated. My sister dated somebody, and then I dated him. Made a double date. See.
So, how did you meet Grandpa?
Oh, in 1949, Velma and I were Halloweening. We went to Lovell and just having fun, driving up and down Main Street like all the kids did. And I knew Bob Hanson because I had dated him. And I don't remember where I even met him, but I did know him. I guess I dated some other guys, his friends, and
Well, how far away did Grandpa live?
he was a friend. He was out in Crooked Creek, 30 miles out in the hills under the mountain.
So about an
But he-
hour's drive?
No, you can make 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Across the flats. I used to drive across the flats in 30 minutes. I was really driving.
So you guys had mutual friends?
Yeah, we did. That's how I met him, because I never heard of him. Never heard of him, and I never dated in too many other people that were so non-Mormon. Some of them weren't Mormon, but they knew more about him. And he was just a different breed. He really always was.
Yeah, you just told me a little bit ago that most of the kids didn't smoke or drink, and there wasn't anything like that
No, but
around.
he
But over
did.
at Crooked Creek, it was a little more common.
Well, that family.
Yeah.
The other family, no. It was like just really different.
Did you, before we talk about Grandpa though, before we get into that, did you fall in love with anybody before Grandpa? No?
No. You always have crushes, but no.
Nothing. You weren't very old.
No, I'm very old, and I was out for fun. We were having a lot of fun because we dance and laugh and just have fun. I dated a lot of guys.
So a lot of dates, mostly friendly, platonic,
just-
and having fun and
That's what it was.
doing teenage stuff.
Yeah.
And then, so you
Stealing
graduated.
watermelon and chickens and stuff like that.
So you said you were Halloweening, trick or treating.
No, we were just out Halloween.
Just so that would be your senior year in high school,
Yeah.
right?
So when we went to Lovell and they got in our car, we got in theirs, I don't remember what, but we were coming back to Cowley, just having fun. And Velma said, "Oh, let's start a fire across the road." Of course, she's from a family of boys, see, ornery ones, even though they were Mormon. So we stopped the car, and I don't know what she put on the highway, which was really against the law, and set it on fire. And I remember that fire going along there, and I couldn't hardly believe we were doing that. And cars were having to come and stop till the fire was gone. But that's what we did. And it went right out. But that was the first time I met him. Then we took him back to Lovell, and he went home.
He stopped at the fire, the bonfire?
He was with us.
Oh, he was with you.
He got in the car with us, he and Bob Hanson. I knew Bob.
And that was your mutual friend, right? Bob Hanson
Yeah.
knew Grandpa.
Yeah. Oh, they were great friends. Grew up together. Yeah.
So what was your first impressions of Grandpa?
Oh, he was fun. Everybody was having fun, you know.
What did he look like?
My mother thought he was a real pretty boy. He was kind of dark and he only weighed 142 pounds.
He's real tall and thin, right?
And yeah, 5'10", and broad shoulders, and he wore Indian moccasins most of the time, beaded, and he wore a beaded leather vest a lot, and then Western shirt, the gabardine Western shirt, and Levi 501.
Was he considered a cowboy?
Oh, he was cowboy, yeah.
Yeah, he came from a cowboy family.
Oh, yeah, and he wore a hat, cowboy hat. But Bob Hanson did too. But he didn't wear the leather beads and stuff.
Yeah.
But he...
And how old? You were 18-ish, right? And Grandpa was 21?
No, I was 17.
Oh, you're 17 and Grandpa was 20, right? So Grandpa didn't... He was just going to stay at home and work the ranch and all that. He wasn't going...
No, he wasn't going anywhere.
Yeah.
Bob Hanson wasn't either. Nobody did.
So everybody out having fun or partying or whatever, they were all late teens and early 20s. Everybody's just getting along and doing it, and you met him. And then how did you guys start dating?
Oh, he asked me to go Saturday night dance.
Just during your school year?
The rest of the year. But I didn't just date him.
But he was one of them.
But he was one. But I had formal dance dates. Others, this Sheets from Powell is still dating him. And my cousin took me to my senior prom. I was dating another guy. I dated him a lot, Ivan AC. Yeah, I dated a lot of them, but everybody, that's what you did. And if you thought that was your boyfriend, he dated somebody else, nobody cared. I mean,
Nobody was going steady or
nobody cared. You just got to go someplace and dance and
So
laugh. And they weren't serious.
How was Grandpa? Was he wild? Was he?
No, he was just. I didn't know he even drank and smoked. No, he was very,
He was
very
on his best
nice.
behavior when he took
Well,
you
we
out?
went to Mormon schools. Yeah. Then it was later found out how awful he was. Yeah.
So then you graduated high school and you'd been dating, and then you said that everybody kind of went about their way.
But they all left.
So then I'm guessing you and Grandpa started dating more during that summer,
Yeah.
and just kind of decided
Yeah.
it was because you'd known him almost a year, right? You met him
Yeah.
late October, and you guys got married early September.
Yeah, and then during the summer we did go to Red Lodge Fair. We went to Billings Fair. We went to Powell Fair. And,
Did you get to know his family?
yeah, I didn't know Grandma Strong very well, and I didn't really want to know her. She was 86 years old, and they said she was really staunch and ornery and old, and she was a nice lady. She just tough, and old and tired.
That was Grandpa's
Great grandma.
great grandma.
And yeah, and Jesse Sullivan that raised him, he came to the wedding. And
Is he the guy that was in prison?
he wasn't in prison.
Oh, okay.
He was running from the law or somebody, and he was down under the water in Texas somewhere under the reeds breathing. He had been in that Mexican war.
So he was an outlaw.
Well, we don't know
Oh,
because you don't know who outlaws were.
but that's who. That's he
But
was
he
around
was-
Grandpa a lot.
He raised him.
He raised him.
Yeah, he came. Yeah.
Is that because great grandpa Jay
Yeah.
died when he was younger, and so Jesse Sullivan helped raise
It wasn't
Grandpa, is that
a
what
great
happened?
grandfather.
my great grandfather.
His name was Kelsey. What was it? Jim Kelsey. No, he was alive. Jay Kelsey's dad. He was alive. He was in California, I think.
Well, you said what I was getting at was you said Jesse Sullivan raised him, but where
Well,
was Jay
because-
Kelsey?
Well, she raised him too. Grandma Strong raised him.
Oh, I see. So they're like brothers, even though they weren't really related. He was family.
There was Grandma Strong, who was married to Frank Strong, who was a Wood alias. He died at 50. Jesse Sullivan came into the picture, and I thought he came over the mountain from Buffalo. Lynn's got an entirely different story, so I don't know anything. So we'll see.
All right.
But
So, anyways, we'll go back to Grandpa. So, Grandpa was a gentleman. When
Yeah.
he took you out,
Oh,
he,
yeah.
he didn't. I mean, he
No
wasn't a partier,
partying.
no
Oh,
wild,
no.
no nothing. And so,
No.
you guys went and did dating over the summer fairs and
Oh, yeah.
traveled and did all that. And then, what did your parents think of Grandpa?
well, I don't know. They seemed to. My mom really liked him. I think they liked him a lot. But when we wanted to get married, my mom said, "I don't know if you can handle those people. They're really a tough, wild bunch." I
So
don't
she knew
know.
about the family.
She knew about Grandma Strong because they were hard,
Yeah.
and she didn't approve of drinking and smoking. But Jay did, and I think her husband did. I think that's where it come from, was her husband.
What did Grandpa Averitt think of him?
He liked him too, and I don't think he's too worried.
No.
I don't think so.
How did Grandpa propose to you?
Oh, he asked me to marry him, and then he went out in the corral and asked my dad if he'd let me marry him. Then he had to go in and ask my mom.
So that was you first, then Grandpa Averitt, and then Grandma Averitt.
Yes, very
And-
nice.
And they all said, yes, there's no problems. Yeah. And so You guys got married. You got married on September 1st,
Out on the farm.
1950.
Yes.
And where?
Out on the farm. We were married in the living room, and we had
In your house.
farmhouse. It was very nice. And there was flower gardens outside. The lawn was beautiful. It was just beautiful out there. My mom had flowers everywhere.
And how many people came?
There must have been about 25 in the house. And she set a big table with white tablecloths, and she put planks over flower barrels for seating, and she put sheets around them. And she fixed a turkey dinner. Great big turkey. And then we had a small wedding cake as a decoration, but we didn't cut that. So she had her big dinner, and then everybody went outside in the yard and visited till about 4 o'clock. Everybody went home, and we went to town in the big gymnasium building and had the reception. And that's where the wedding cake wasn't served either. We had big sheet cakes and punch and nuts and mints.
And
That's it.
How many people went to the reception?
Oh, God.
The whole town?
Probably,
Yeah. It was a night out, right?
yes. And they all dressed up, and we had a sweetheart waltz. My dad hired an orchestra for $35. A nice orchestra. Yeah, Carol Whalen. And then we sneaked out. My Aunt Vera took us out home, and she'd hid the pickup. We had a new pickup. It's Jess's new Ford pickup. She hid it behind the haystack because they were going to chivalry us, grab us and take us in a wheelbarrow down Main Street, and we didn't want it. So she took us out, and they didn't miss us. Then when they missed us, they were after us, but we grabbed our stuff and hid out and went to Billings.
Right after that night.
Yeah, after the party,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, we stayed.
And how did Grandpa's family? Did they behave that night, knowing that they were? I mean, knowing that they had kind of have a reputation of being wild.
Oh yeah, they didn't do anything like
No,
that.
they were.
Oh yeah, they didn't do that. They're very nice people, very nice. Then they had a wedding dance a week later down at Kane, and it was all Germans and farmers, successful farmers. And I'm telling you, that was a wedding party with a band. A real wedding party.
Well, that was a week later, right?
Yes.
So
and they were not Mormons.
Yeah, but so they had like a big party with that and the.
It was like a Dutch party.
But you were a Kelsey now, so you went to that party. Did like your parents go to that party?
For a little while.
Yeah. Oh, so it was a big thing, and it was like a town thing too, right?
No, it wasn't. It was down in the river bottom country where all the farms were, and they were all Dutch, German. And the bartender brought me a fifth of whiskey for a gift, and the farm women brought me pillows and embroidered stuff. You can't believe all the nice stuff I got. And I was shocked. I'd never seen anybody like that in my life. You can't believe it. And my sister, she didn't like it at all, and they went home. Dale knew. Her husband knew. He knew all about those people. He'd lived there. He knew Dawn.
So they came to your wedding, but they left early.
To the dance.
Oh, to the dance.
That's-
Or to the reception.
Well, no, the reception. She was there serving in Cowley. This is the later.
Oh, okay. So I was a little confused.
There's
So
two-
you had two receptions. You had a wedding, then you had a reception in Cowley.
The same day.
Same day. And then you and Grandpa went on a honeymoon. And where did you go on your honeymoon?
To Billings.
And how long did you stay?
Oh, 4 or 5 days. And Bob Hanson, his friend, and his sister Pat, and his cousin Shirley Ann came in a convertible, Chevy convertible. And we just went hard and all over and just... bummed around, ate in the cafes and restaurants, whatever.
And then
They went home, and then we went to the movies, and then we went home, and they had that wedding dance for us. And they served tubs of beer, tubs of bottles of beer and whatever. Yeah, we went home at 4:30 in the morning. I wanted to die. I had never seen so many wild people in my life.
But
they were having fun.
But your sister and her husband came, and they left early because it kind of wasn't their scene, right?
she got mad. She left. She didn't like it. She didn't like any of that. No drinking. And he didn't care. He just stayed today and tomorrow. He never did straighten up,
What was Grandpa doing for money back then?
Working for Grandma out on the creek.
Working the farm or working the ranch?
Yeah. He drove back and forth because that time there wasn't any place for us to live. We lived in Lovell in my grandma's house, and it was just a 3-room house. Well, it had a bathroom, a little kitchen, little living room, little bedroom.
Were you happy?
Front lawn. Yeah, that was a cute little place because across the street was a dance hall, and then there was Main Street. That was just a block off Main Street. Yeah, and I knew everybody there. Yeah. And Pearl lived about 5 blocks down. And yeah.
And you stayed close with Pearl?
Yeah. We didn't stay in that house very long. It was too cold. We moved over by Dr. Tom Croft in a nice little place. It was really nice. And we stayed there, and then Grandma just died first. And then she died before Christmas. And then after the first of the year, he and I moved out to the home place on Crooked Creek. And that's where we lived and fed the cattle and stayed.
When did you first find out you were pregnant?
God.
I mean, there wasn't, like, pregnancy tests back then, so you just kind of went through the motions of having the sickness and all that, and then you kind of knew.
Yeah, oh yeah, that I did add morning sickness.
Yeah. How long after you got married?
Well, it says married the 1st September, and Lynn was born October 13.
Okay, so that would have been
13
months after, so 4 months. So you're talking around Christmas, New Year's?
Yeah.
Somewhere around there. And then, so, how was your first pregnancy?
It was pretty good.
Yeah? No complications?
No.
Nope. Was Grandpa excited?
Yeah.
Everybody excited?
Oh, yes.
What about...
Pretty little girl.
What about your parents?
Oh, yeah.
Everybody?
Oh, and she was beautiful. Oh, yes. And the Kelseys couldn't buy enough fancy clothes for her. And then when Sherry came, they couldn't buy enough for her. She was beautiful, too. The Tillotts said our babies were the prettiest they'd ever seen. And those 2 little girls were really pretty.
So you got pregnant and kind of life went on. Did you work during your pregnancy?
I just helped him feed cows. I'd drive the pickup.
Oh, so you worked with Grandpa at that time. You didn't go back to having her like a...
Oh, no, I never worked.
Yeah.
No.
So you worked with Grandpa.
Oh, yeah. And I didn't work hard out there. I helped him with the feeding because when I helped him pull a calf one day, there was a 2-year-old that was calving because we checked the cows while we were feeding. It was February, cold. And then sometimes they'd go down the creek and have their calves, and then we'd have to pull the calves out of the water. But this 2-year-old was having trouble, so he put a rope or a chain around her neck and hooked it onto the pickup, the calf's head. It wouldn't come. And then I had to drive the pickup and back up. I had to help pull that calf. And I was just frantic, and I kept jerking and jerking, about killed both the calf and the cow, him screaming at me. And finally, after the calf came, he was trying to get the chain off its neck or rope, whatever. And the cow chased him on the hood of the pickup. She was mad. So that's the end of me doing that. But I got into experiences like that were very good for me. Taught me a real lesson.
Did you and Grandpa argue a lot?
No.
Got along? So Lynn was born, and between her and my mom, just normal rural farm life, and you help Grandpa out and raise your kid. And
Well, I'd drive across the flat to the old Kane schoolhouse and railroad because they had a church there. And I'd take Lynn. And it was kind of fun. And then, of course, they took that church into Lovell, and everybody in the river bottom was mad. But I'd take her in the pickup across the flats, just her and I, and get her all dressed up. And I did too. Everybody dressed up. And he had an old wood stove, and I'd let Lynn down sometime, and she'd go over in the wood pile and clunk the wood, and I'd get ready to go home.
Did you attend church more, or it's about the same? Kind of went whenever you.
No, I went more.
You went more.
I went more after they moved that little church, moved the people into Lovell. I didn't go from Crooked Creek, didn't. And then it was kind of fun. We did a lot of fun things out there then.
I forgot to ask you, who married you?
The bishop.
The bishop at the time?
Mm-hmm. He owned the canning factory. He was a twin brother. And, yeah, Peterson was his name. Robert Peterson.
So you had Lynn, and then you had my mom in 1953.
Uh-huh.
And any stories or anything in particular in the early 50s before Cecil came?
Well, before we left town, Dawn and I took the two little ones up to the mountain to ride. And they rode on the front of our saddles. We stayed in the cabin and moved the cows around. And I remember washing vipers in the creek, putting them on the bushes to dry.
So the kids were with you guys while you worked on the farm. So you guys were never separated. You didn't put them in any type of daycare. I mean,
Oh, no. And a lot of times Don would go out uranium hunting with his Geiger counter, and he'd take Lynn with him. And she's just a little tiny thing, and he'd stop and build a fire, and she'd follow him around. Then he'd bring her home, and she'd be all full of black smoke, and she'd be so tired, her hair all gummed up. Sheridan never liked to go with him. And then a lot of times, if he went out and checked the cows, he'd put Lynn in the back of the pickup because he had a big trailer, and he'd stick her in there and tell her to stay there. Take the horse out, tell her to stay there if he was just going to go a little ways, because it wasn't worth taking her. He'd hurry so fast. She'd stay there. And then he'd go look and come back and take her up, put the horse in and leave again. But, yeah.
But you and Grandpa were good with the kids, never got frustrated with them? Or
No, because I didn't know what to do with them. I was never around babies.
Yeah.
And he was. He knew exactly what to do about an earache. Yeah. He tended kids all the time and knew about kids. Yeah.
So you learned from Grandpa. Did you still see your parents a lot?
Yeah, but not so much because they wouldn't come out. My mom and dad didn't come out very often. Nobody
They
came.
stayed in Cowley.
Yeah,
And you guys...
they moved from the farm in town then.
Oh.
Cecil finished high school. But they just didn't come out very often. Grandma came once. None of them came. They just didn't do that much, you know.
Were you happy?
Oh, yeah, we had a good time.
And then Cecil came in I'm taking a guess here, 56, 57?
57.
57. And he was firstborn son. And any complications there or any stories?
Yeah, there were. He was born with a hematoma on his head. And the doctor thought he was going to have to break his shoulders. He weighed 9'8", and it was labor 36 hours. So I was in the hospital 8 days with each of the other two because it was hard, the birth. And then he was 5 days. I was in the hospital, I think, only 5 days with him. And I went home, and then 5 days after that, the doctor told me to bring him back to be circumcised. And then he stuck that needle in there and drew all that blood out twice. And pretty hard on that little baby.
Well, was it hard on you and Grandpa? I would imagine, right? You having a...
Well, his mother never had trouble in childbirth. So, and our family all did. They all hemorrhaged and they're in the hospital a long time.
And it was common back then, too, for kids to... I mean, you told me once that it wasn't uncommon for people not only to lose children...
They lost them all the
Lots,
time.
especially out there, but it wasn't uncommon for people to have those kinds of issues. It wasn't... That's kind of what happened.
That's what happened.
Yeah. So it wasn't anything, like, devastating. As you can imagine nowadays, if that happened to a kid, you know, the parents would freak out, but...
Oh, no,
then it wasn't
you
like
you
that.
did. You had it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, did you have the same doctor for all your kids? And
No, I didn't. I had Dr. Story with Cecil. No, let's see, who did I have? No, I had Dr. Story with James. And, of course, he went to prison.
yeah, the
He was a
infamous
good
Dr.
doctor.
Story.
He was a good
So,
doctor.
how did you come up with the names of your kids? So we'll start with Lynn. Where did Lynn's name come from?
From Dawn, I named her Robin. Her name was Robin. And then he came to the hospital and said her name's Lynn. Okay, it's Lynn.
And that was that.
And it was Linn. One Lynn. Linn. You know, like wife. Then Sherry was Stephanie. Came to the hospital and said her name's Sherry. Sherri. Okay.
Did you have problems with him changing it, or you
No.
didn't care?
No, that's fine. Better anyway.
But it was Robin and Stephanie became Lynn and Sherry.
Yeah.
And then what about Cecil? Was he named after your brother?
I named him
Yeah.
Cecil Dawn.
And Grandpa didn't have anything to say about that.
He didn't care because he didn't want to be Donald. He didn't want him to be Donald. Don was fine.
Did Grandpa not like the name Donald?
No, he hated Donald.
Oh.
Hates Donald. Oh, yeah, Donald Duck. And he kept saying Donald Duck. He just hated it.
I didn't know that.
Oh. But his name was Donald J. Kelsey Jr.
And then, what about, while we're talking about the names, what about James?
What was it? Well, Don picked out, I named him James J. Oh, I was going to name him J. Jim. I said, what are we?
Oh, so
know,
you just reversed it
hillbillies.
and made it a little
finesse.
more, a little more proper.
James J.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty.
And then what about Cindy? Cynthia.
I named her Celeste Cynthia. Lynn came to the hospital, and I'd already filled out the birth certificate. It was all downstairs, taken care of. She came in and said, well, that's a terrible name. Her name is Cynthia Celeste. Oh, I named her Celesta Cynthia. Celesta was my mom. And she has a terrible name. Her name is Cynthia Celeste.
So your oldest daughter.
So I said, okay.
So your oldest daughter, Lynn, I guess, was about 20, right? She's
21.
Like 21, and she changed that name around. So Grandpa named the first two. You named Cecil. You and Grandpa both named James, but just kind of and Cindy, and then you and Lynn named Cindy. Okay. Anything about before James was born with your three kids that stands out to you?
I didn't know I carried him for a long time.
Oh, okay.
And then I had complications, and I called my doctor. And he says, how long does it take you to get off the mountain? And I said, 1 hour. He said, go up the mountain. So I went the mountain. And then after that, everything turned out fine, except I didn't know when he was due. Couldn't really tell. January we knew, so we figured, well, maybe the 17th was the 25th. And I was always pretty much right on the nose, the doctor told me, and that's the day before, the day, or the day after. So he came when he was due. He was 8'6". He weighed 8'6".
And that was in '65.
Yeah.
James was born. So Lynn and Sherry are teenagers at this point, or right about there, right? Lynn's a teenager. My mom's almost a teenager.
Yeah.
And Cecil's still little. How did they react to
James?
Yeah.
Oh,
or Cecil even.
Oh, they were just thrilled to pieces.
Yeah, my mom told me stories. They used to dress him up and...
Oh, they loved him, and he was the prettiest little boy. He just was big kid, big blonde kid. We called him blonde. His hair was...
This Cecil we're talking about, right?
brown, big blue eyes. And they just loved him to death because he's always, when he's a little boy, very mild-mannered, you know.
So he just went with the flow and played with his sisters?
Oh, yes, and he played with the boys, too, until he got in the 5th grade, and then he got to be a little trouble.
What do you mean?
Well, he called the Japanese boys, Dakota's 2 boys, flat-faced Germans. You know, Japanese were different. He didn't know what they were. And they chased him home, and he came flying in the door and slammed the door, and I said, "Why are you here?" And he says, "Those flat-faced Germans are chasing me." And I said, "You mean the Oda boys?" "Yeah." So I opened the door and I threw him out and slammed the door. I don't know what happened to him. I just threw him out. He made 2 of them. And they were naughty, but... And then he got in a ruckus with the pharmacist's son, but he beat him. He hurt Cecil. He got in trouble for that, the pharmacist's son. Then the banker's son had a hair lip, split lip, and Cecil mocked him all the time. And he came to my door and he said, "That's the most obnoxious kid I've ever known in my life." And so Cecil got in trouble for that. But Cecil was always pretty good with people. There's a few times
He's being a boy, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I fussed too much.
Well, did you have any problems with Lynn and Sherry?
Lynn never minded. She's like Colton. Just let her do what she wanted. I didn't care. Just because she was nice. I mean, she's morally good. Sherry didn't act like her. And Lynn would steal all her clothes, and she'd cry, and I'd say, "Why don't you hide them?" She'd hide them, and Lynn would find them. Oh, yeah, same thing. And she'd take my car, and I'd say, "You can't have my car." She'd drive away in my car.
So the first 3 kids, nobody got in any real big trouble?
Nobody got in trouble.
Couple of scraps, but normal kid stuff for that day and age, right?
Well, yeah, and I didn't... I never thought any of it was serious.
Did you live in the same place the whole time?
No. We bought a little house in Lovell. And my dad paid the down payment, $3,000 on a $7,000 home. He got the loan for me and we paid it. But he got the loan because we didn't... you couldn't borrow money for a house.
And when was this? After Lynn but before my mom? Or after
No, we had 3 kids.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Carmen Avenue. It's on Carmen Avenue.
So you had 3 kids. Grandpa Averett put a down payment down on a house, and you guys had a new house.
Yeah.
Okay. And then how long did you live there?
Well, go till after James was born. Till
Oh.
James was 3. We lived there a long time.
So 10 years, roughly.
Yeah. And it was nice.
Yeah.
We built onto it, and it was nice.
Wasn't there a time, though, you guys moved to Salt Lake City because of my mom had health problems?
When Cecil was born, he was
Okay.
3 weeks old. Sherry was dying. They couldn't take care of her in Lovell or Billings. And they told me in Billings not to bring her back again. I'd take her in the night. I'd drive to Billings alone
And it was her
with her.
kidneys, right?
Yeah. And so the doctor did all he could do, and he said he couldn't do any more, not to bring her. So he said, "You just keep her in Lovell." So I did, and a new doctor came to town, Dr. Tom Croft's son-in-law. He said, "Well, she can't stay here. You take her to Denver to a children's hospital or Salt Lake to a children's hospital. That's where she belongs." See, new medicines.
Yeah, it was so serious she needed to go live in a hospital so they could
Oh, she
watch
was
her.
dying.
Right.
They sent her there to die. And the children's hospital was the last resort. So I get her to Salt Lake, and she's got a temperature of 105. I mean, she's burning up.
Was this a decision you guys made overnight? Like, leave now and go?
Yeah.
Okay, so
I had to get a bishop's recommend. The bishop had to
recommend her to go to the hospital.
Yeah. He had to get you in, and then you don't pay for it.
Gotcha. So you went there, and she had a temperature.
And they took her in and took her away from me. Just took her away from me.
And how'd you feel about that?
I was grateful.
You weren't scared. You were happy.
Oh, I was so happy I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
I was afraid she was going to die in my arms.
Because you felt like you were handing her off to people who knew how to
Yeah, and
do
I
something.
knew I trusted them.
Right.
So they had 2 specialists, and one had palsy, and I thought, I don't want him. Kidney specialist. Well, he's the one that did the surgery on her, and he was very noted. Very, very good. An old man. But this young Japanese doctor told me that I should be grateful. He said, all of these babies or kids come in here. It's last resort. He says, there's hopes for this child. There's hopes. He says, we think we can take care of her.
Was Grandpa with you?
No.
So it was just you and my mom, and you left, and so
Cecil and Grandma in my dad's car. Cecil drove us. My brother drove us.
Oh, okay. So, and then you guys went down, and where did you stay?
My girlfriend, Velma.
Oh, okay. So your childhood friend.
That's why I went there instead of Denver, because I knew I'd have to leave her.
Right.
And that's what people did. They left their children. And they'd leave them for years. Burn victims and everything.
And how long was my mom in the hospital?
Oh, she was in there about a year.
And so for a year you lived with Velma.
Oh, no, I only lived with Velma for 2 or 3 weeks. And Don had Lynn at home. I had Cecil, the brand new baby, 3 weeks old. I couldn't hardly pick myself up. And so I had a baby and a sick child and no car and no money. I had no money. So, and Don, our car was no good, so he had to go bargain with the guy in Lovell. And he gave us a car and told him to pay for it when he could. And the bar in Lovell set up a fund, a jar for $250 they put in there, and he left Lovell with. We had cattle, and nobody would give him a dime. They didn't give money in those days.
Everybody just traded goods, right?
You couldn't borrow money from that bank for nothing. And we had 40 head of calves, and we didn't get the money out of him either. But he got that money and came to Salt Lake with Lynn in a car. And we got an apartment, and all it was a kitchen and a living room. And they put a rollaway bed in there, and this new baby in a basket. Stayed with Velma till he got there, about 2 weeks. So I didn't see a lot of Sherry. But,
was this a scary time in your life?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, I'm not very old. I'm 25 years old, 3 kids.
And how did Grandpa do with it?
He was good. Very good.
Did he go to work right away?
He had to wait 2 weeks, and he kept begging for this job from Velma's husband, Wayne Kinzer's from Lovell. He had a brick mason contracts, building homes, brick homes, and Don wanted to carry hod. So finally, he just went out there and said, I need a job, and I'm going to work. So he started carrying hod, and we got an apartment, a better one, and lived like poor mice.
And how long did you guys live in Salt Lake?
Almost 5 years. And we couldn't do any better. Couldn't do any better. I mean, Salt Lake's a terrible place to live.
So the whole time you were in Salt Lake, my mom's health problems brought you there, but eventually she got out, and it was kind of home for a while.
Oh, she was in and out.
She was in and out for 3 or 5 years.
So when she'd favor in the night, then I'd take her down to the emergency on 21st, the big state hospital, and I'd have to hold her until morning, and then put her in the primary hospital, because they didn't want these kids. They were in a room with a lot of kids dying, like leukemia and cancer, and they were dying, so they didn't want that child coming in. So I'd have to hold her there in emergency and then take her on up. And we took her, the ambulance did. We took her and put her in the hospital again. And well, I was grateful. And I remember one woman said, "I don't leave my child." And I said, I do. And now.
In a way, it kind of kept you a little sane, right? Than sitting in a hospital waiting all the time, right? Like,
Oh, they won't let you do nothing.
right. So there was nothing for you to do there anyways, and so
You
plus you
wouldn't-
had other kids.
Well, yeah. And at one time, I couldn't even go see her in the day. Don took the car to work. So he'd go up every evening, like 7 o'clock. Sometimes he wouldn't even be that cleaned up. They'd pull her crib out in the hall so he could see her. One time, Dr. Tom from Lovell was down there. He made a trip to see her. Isn't that nice of him? And they pulled her crib out in the hall because it was at night. But when I'd go up, a lot of times in the morning, there'd be one empty crib. And I remember the one baby girl having leukemia, and she'd be bleeding in the mouth. And I knew it wouldn't be long. But I knew we were going to keep Sherry. I did know that. And she went through, she couldn't even walk. They wouldn't let her walk. She stayed in the crib. And they fed her in the crib. And then when she got to go to the kitchen in her crib, she was thrilled to death. That meant she was really getting well because she had tubes all over. So, yeah, it was a blessing. Salt Lake was really hard, but it was a blessing. And I was very active in the church. Every ward I was really active, yeah. And I was Kelly and Lovell when I lived there. I was. So
everybody did okay.
everybody did okay.
They did okay. I mean, and then when it was time to leave Salt Lake, you went back to Lovell, and that's when Grandpa made the down payment for your house, correct?
Yeah.
When you went back. Okay. But for the most part in Salt Lake City,
Oh, we had a lot of fun.
Yes.
It was lots of fun. But financially, there was no way we were ever going to do anything. Because laying brick, it was seasonal. And it was too hot in the summer when he worked. Yeah, he didn't make a lot of money. He made $5 an hour, hod carrier, and $2.50 learning how to lay brick till he became a journeyman, and then we left. He didn't like laying brick.
and then you left, and he was done with that, and you went back to Lovell, back to ranching. Correct?
No.
Oh no.
No, the ranching was gone because, and then he was driving truck, and he did help a lot in the ranch too, but I had an elite shop too. Grandpa and I went down and bought the elite shop, and I had a boutique, a beautiful ladies shop and children's shop. Of course, it burned down. Everything does.
But you
know.
owned it.
It had my name out in the street on lights, LaRae's Elite Shop.
And
And I was on the radio. I had shows at the High Art Theater, style shows, with a gas company sponsoring.
And what were you doing? Haircuts and...
No, I was selling clothing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, beautiful clothing. Jansen. Yeah, yeah.
Western clothing.
No, very dressy.
Oh, okay.
Newborn Twinkies for new babies, all boxed. Cinderella dresses for little girls.
And you-
Peaches and cream.
And you and Grandpa both ran the company?
He didn't. He helped me get a loan for $1,500. He signed with me to pay 2 different people a note. And I paid them both off, plus the bank. And then times got pretty tough. But there was a fire and burned me down. Broke me. So then he and I had to go into craft stores then. But the kids went to school and did really well. They were very popular, and they did very well in school. Cecil played basketball in the 5th grade, and They got to do a lot of fun things. Yeah, we did too. Don and I did too.
When you did vacations and stuff, was it the same? You kind of just stayed in that area, went to Yellowstone and
The Billings
and,
Fair.
Yeah. So it was all local. I mean, local, regional stuff.
Yeah, I took a trip one time to Salt Lake to Valence Manufacturing Company. We were having a bowling alley banquet, and everybody bowled, and I sponsored a bowling team. They wouldn't let me play because I was a terrible bowler. But they won. They'd win state. And I bought their shirts and their shoes and paid their fees. And Grandpa even had a bowling team, but he played. But we were having a banquet, and I didn't have enough fancy dresses. And I had a nice Mercury car, a new one. So I went by myself to Salt Lake, 500 miles away, went to the company and bought return dresses, fancy ones, for $5 each, and I think I bought about 40 of them. Came home and put them in the cleaners, cleaned them and sold them as new dresses. They were new, but they'd been returned, you know.
Yeah.
So I made a lot of money on that banquet, and there was only one of each, see, in a little town. Boy, when everybody knew I had a shipment, they didn't know I headed out for Salt Lake by myself and got it. And yeah, I stayed with a friend overnight.
So up until you guys, at some point you guys moved to Cody, right?
Yeah.
And that
James was 3 years old, and we left him with my dad and Jeanette for a little while. And we went to Billings to train. They trained us in Billings. But we got the job from Harslip in Cody
trained you for what?
to be a manager.
Of what?
Corral stores.
Oh, okay.
Western stores. So we went to Billings for 6 weeks. We should have been there a year. Everybody trained a year. And we went up there, I think, for 6 weeks, had a beautiful little house. The girls went to Cook High School in Billings, a nice high school. I had Cecil in grade school, and my next-door neighbor from Lovell had moved to Billings. So she was my babysitter for James. And he was 3, but I had to leave him 6 weeks with my dad and Jeanette, you know, because I didn't have anybody.
Who's Jeanette?
His wife, his second wife.
Oh, okay.
And so we went up and trained, and danged if they didn't send us to Cody to take over a store, to manage a store. I didn't want to go to Cody. I didn't want to manage a store, because it meant I didn't get paid every month. We were poor, and we had a nice house, everything looking really good, working with a nice couple. They were the managers. I mean, we worked hard. I fell in the street one night. I was so tired, couldn't even walk. But we had a nice life. Send us to Cody to pick up the pieces in this T-Bar C store. We did. And we hired kids like Lynn and Sherry and Linda and kids from Cowley, and Sherry worked at the Cody Corral. But we were very successful. So the man gave us a brand new store on the hill, great big one. It was enormous. And shut this little one down on Main Street. So we were up there and we were doing really good. What does he do? Pulls in another couple. We trained them. And moves us to West Yellowstone to pick up that store. The lowest on the totem pole, and we were making less money. So he said, well, if you don't want to go, you can go to Cheyenne, work under Elling. You'll make a lot of money with Elling. Well, he's a staunch Mormon bishop. You know, I don't like that. So we didn't go. So anyway, we went to West Yellowstone, and the girls were gone.
So back before that, you and Grandpa, for the most part, get along for the first 20 years, right? Because
pretty good. We had our moments in Lovell. He had his moments.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did. I'd have to haul him out of the bar. I'd call down there and dinner's ready. Everybody's ready for dinner. He's not here. I'd say he's there. I'd go down there and go in the front of that bar, and he was out the back and beat me home.
Did a lot of men's wives do that?
I don't know. I
Oh.
did. Oh, yeah, the guys after construction or what, they thought they owed it to themselves to go to the bar and sit. They thought that was all right.
Especially on payday, right?
And the women didn't like it.
Yeah.
So, but it happened.
What year did your mom die?
1964.
And how did that affect you?
It was really hard because Cecil and I were really relieved when she died. It was the biggest relief for either one of us.
She was sick for a while.
She was really sick. She was sick when Pearl died in 50. Let's see, when did she die? She died in 54. And my mom couldn't get over that. She never, ever got over that death.
So back to Pearl, how she wasn't very old then. She was only...
She's 25 with 3 babies.
And what did she die of?
I don't know. They said wasn't tumors. People thought it was tumors, but it was just cysts. But actually,
But no.
I think it was spinal meningitis because they didn't know there was 2 kinds. And I think she had the one that killed her in 2 weeks.
And so it was a surprise, right?
Oh, yeah, she went blind. She had headaches, went blind. Dr. Tom said, get her to Billings. I can't help her. And we took her to Billings, and she just went into a coma and tried to get a plane. Well, we had the neurologist was in Denver. He left because there's only one surgeon, neurosurgeon. He was in Denver doing surgery. We tried to get a plane out of Billings. There were no planes. There was no planes. So she had to stay there. She's in the hospital 2 weeks and died. But the surgeon did come back, and he cut incisions in the back of her head for x-rays. And then he...
Well, how did her death affect you?
Oh, it was terrible.
Yeah.
That was really awful. And I was mad. I was really mad.
And so your mom that affected her a lot, and you're talking another 10 years she lived.
She lived about 9. She got leukemia, and I think she'd had it forever and didn't know it. I think she really had what I've got, because you can live... It is chronic, and it turns acute. But I really think she had all her life.
And so when she passed away, that hit you hard?
When my mother did?
Oh, no, you said Cecil and you were a little relieved.
Oh, no,
That's
we were
really-
just glad.
Yeah, and how did your dad take it?
It was relief for him, too.
Yeah.
He got married 3 months later.
To
Yeah.
Jeanette? I never
Jeanette.
knew. Yeah.
He married Jeanette.
And so Grandpa Aver he's kind of just stayed in
In the area.
for the rest of his life. Well,
He came and worked with us in Cody and lived with us.
yeah.
Yeah, we finally got a great big house. We had a horrible little house for a while. It was tiny and everybody crowding. But we got a big house, and we had, I think there are 11 rooms. And that's when Cindy was born.
Okay, we're gonna stop there for a minute, and then we'll pick up right there. Okay, so then at some point you moved to Cody for work, and is that where Cindy was born?
Yes.
She was born in Cody, and then you guys, any issues with Cindy or?
A lot. From the 5th month on, I had bed rest. And it was hot. And Don moved me into the utility room, which was nice. A nice bed. My dad bought me a new fan. And I had to go on pain pills. I was crawling the walls. About crazy. Yeah, because every time I walked, I went into labor. And then I wasn't eating good. I lived on popsicles and I think iced tea and dinner. I eat dinner every night. But I wasn't doing good. And when she was born, she weighed 8 pounds. And she was okay, except she's all rashy. She just rashy. And it was probably my diet that did it. I don't know. But they cleared it up with cream, you know. But probably, I don't know. They never did tell me. And she was a pretty healthy little baby, but only she was busy. She just busy.
Than the other four, busier than the other four kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cecil wasn't ever busy, neither was James. Sherry was a little bit flighty. She was flighty. She cried a lot when she was a baby. She cried, and I carried her on my hip for months. I just carried her and do my work on my hip. Somebody carried her all the time. She cried all the time, but Cindy didn't cry. She just was just busy.
So right around that time, right? Cindy was born in, I'm going to take a guess, 71 or 72?
71, August 17.
Yeah, and so my mom and Lynn had graduated high school by then, and Lynn was married to Jack by then, I think, right?
She
or close.
Married him in February. Cindy was only 6 months old or so, maybe. Yeah.
How'd you feel about your first daughter getting married?
I liked Jack. I knew him all through high school. I knew them all. I knew Sid and Sherry were engaged, and she was going to go to Hawaii, and she got engaged, decided she wouldn't. Then at Christmas time, we sure as hell put her on a plane to go to Hawaii to college, because I didn't think Sid thought he was too bossy. I liked him, but I just thought he was too bossy.
But what did Grandpa think of Jack and Sid? Or Jack and
he
my
liked
dad?
them both.
He liked them all.
But he didn't want Sherry to marry Sid. I don't think. He never said nothing, but he didn't.
What'd you think of, because Lynn went off to college too for a while, right?
She took Sherry's place. She didn't even know she's going.
Oh, okay.
She took her place.
So my mom was the first one to leave. And she went to Hawaii.
She didn't go. Lynn took her place.
Oh, I see.
She was going to go.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, her best friend told her where to go. Her sister had been there. So she had everything ready to go. Then Sid didn't want her to go. So he gave her a diamond, I guess. I can't remember. But, and she went to work, I think, at the some company that ear tagged to cows. I don't remember what it's called.
Well, we'll get their story when we do theirs. But
yeah.
How did you feel about your daughters being, eventually, they married. Lynn marries Jack within a couple years.
Oh, we really liked him.
And then my mom marries my dad.
And we liked him. He came for her. And it was hard. It was really hard for him to get there.
Well, how did you guys feel, and how was, like, you and Grandpa, how was it that she was marrying a Tongan, and did you guys even know what Tongans were?
I never heard of them. I never heard of them. But when we were in the Krause stores, and Sherry was going to go, and Lynn went, this one gal that worked for us told us she was from California, and she lived with Samoans and Tongans up and down her street. It was Anaheim. And she says, one of them's going to marry a Samoan or a Tongan. And I says, what? I don't think so. And she said, oh, yeah. Well, Lynn came home, and she did date a Samoan. She did, and they were very nice. She belonged to Samoan Club and had a good time. And she came home, planned to get married, and then Sherry, we put her on a plane and sent her. We like Sione. And I still like him. I still like him a lot. I do.
So you were okay, because you knew Jack and the Beamer family your whole life, so no issues there. And then you met my dad, and no issues there. And then eventually Cecil graduates high school right around this time, right? He's early 70s, right?
He's in West Yellowstone.
He graduates, and then what does he decide to do? And how did you feel about it?
We didn't have much to say about Cecil.
Yeah.
He was in their football. They won their first game. He was on their basketball team. They won their first game. And he was a big kid. They were all little. And he dated Valeria from Brazil, a beautiful Spanish girl. And she had to go home. And he wanted to be an exchange student and go, but we really didn't even know where she was then. And it just didn't work out. He didn't get to go. And he wanted to go. He wanted to know where she was. But she finally wrote a letter and said it'd be best if we didn't find her because they were warring down there. Her dad was a lawyer, and she was worried. So we never heard from her again. And so after we left West Yellowstone, we couldn't take him to Alaska. He was 18. He didn't stay at home anyway his senior year. He was out on the lake, Hebgen Lake, with the Keith brothers from Salt Lake. Their dad and mother flew in all the time. He went home a lot. We didn't even expect him home a lot. He was on the radio. He talked on the radio in the morning, and then he worked for us if he wanted to. And then when we pulled out and left, we told him we'd send for him. Well, he went back to Cody and stayed with Lynn, worked in the oil fields. Then he went to southern Wyoming. He just wanted to go do his own thing. He was 18.
And at that point, so you guys had been Wyoming, then Salt Lake, then back to Wyoming, then Billings, then Cody, then West Yellowstone, and then from there you went to Alaska. And that was after Cindy was born, shortly after Cindy was born, right?
We went there in 76.
And so Brandon was born, I was born, Ali and Colton were born. And so you had 4 grandkids, and you were 43 years old, 42 years old. How'd that feel?
Well, I was a grandma, 39.
With Brandon, right?
I think I was around 39 or 40.
How'd it feel?
Because I was 38 when Cindy was born. So 18 months later, Brandon was born.
And how'd that feel?
It was nice. Oh, he's so spoiled. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And how did Grandpa do with the grandkids? Was he excited for it, or? Yep.
He's good with kids.
So you went up to Alaska. Did you want to move to Alaska?
I was leaving. I said Hawaii or Alaska. And Grandpa said, I can't make a living in Alaska. I don't belong to the union anymore. I'm not a teamster. And he always wanted to go to Alaska. And Lena was up there, Elena Tillett from the Crooked Creek. She was married up there and very substantial. And she'd invited us up before. So we called her on the phone and asked her if we could come up. And she said, yeah, she was tickled. So we went up there and lived with her for 6 weeks. And Grandpa put in his application, construction. Well, it's too early. Got there in April. So I went to work in a store, Western store. I was offered 2 jobs. I put in 2 applications, and I got the jobs that day. So I could have my pickle. I went to work for Midge. And I worked for her, kind of managed the store for quite a while.
Where did you live in Anchorage when you first got there? In those apartments there on
Merrill Drive,
on
because
Merrill
Lena's husband, Jim Slimko,
they lived right around the corner, right?
they did. But here's his lumber company right across the street from us, Kitty Corner. He was the manager, Jim Slimko. He was a cabinet maker. And the people that he worked for owned those apartment buildings. They were never there. The old man was never there. And they couldn't rent them.
So
we rented one.
So moving to Anchorage, did you like it as when you first got there?
Oh, I just loved it.
But you guys went there in the wintertime, or the end of winter, right?
Oh, it was April.
Oh, okay.
It was wonderful breakup time.
So you went
it's
there.
just wonderful.
So you immediately liked it,
Oh yeah.
and you had a place to live. Grandpa got a job, and it was the boom time,
Well,
right?
I got the first job.
You
He had
got-
to wait 6 weeks for it to thaw. And then he got his job. He had to wait for it. He got it. And it was on a cat.
And it was boom time in Alaska, right? I mean,
It was over.
Oh, it was over by then.
Just getting over. Boom time, it was up till 76, and that's when we got there. We should have been there 10 years earlier. Not worked for Corral Stores.
But, I mean, it was kind of a new adventure, right?
Oh, yeah, and it was fun.
Yeah, and so you had James at the time, and he was 10 or 11. And then you had Cindy, who was 5. And then you had, shortly thereafter, well, Lynn and Jack had moved up. And then my mom and my dad, with 3 kids, had moved up. And
From
so
Arizona.
you had family around and friend. You had Lena and
Jim.
Jim, and then it wasn't that hard. I guess short period of time, you had most of your family there.
Oh, we didn't fuss about it anyway.
Yeah.
We didn't. We were good to go anywhere. We always lived where it was cold anyway. We never lived where it was tropical and hot for very long. That was no problem.
Yeah. So you lived in Anchorage for like 22 years, something like that, right?
Well, 76 to 96.
So 20 years.
Grandpa stayed another year.
Right.
And then he came down because I bought that house.
Right. So your whole time in Anchorage, Cindy grew up there and graduated high school. James, got there but he pretty much grew up there, graduated high school. Grandpa worked off and on the slope and did some other things.
That's where he worked, yeah.
And then eventually Cecil came up. And then we were there the whole time. Lynn and Jack were there the whole time. A lot of good memories. Is there any, because we all kind of know that time period of your life, although there's some things we may not know, but you guys owned a country western shirt shop. I remember that I'm trying to remember.
Seward. Old Seward
Highway.
And Northern Lights.
And Northern Lights.
Benson.
I remember that. And I remember Grandpa. I remember you always picked me up from kindergarten. That's one of my fond memories. And we'd go shopping and you'd buy me toys and things like that. And we'd always do, I guess sort of like when you were a kid, Thanksgiving was always kind of just, we picked a house and everybody went to the house. And it's usually the Beamers. Christmas the same. Mm-hmm. Sometimes at your place over there in Country Woods. Every once in a while at our house, although our house was smaller. Some fishing. I don't remember our families going camping a lot or anything like that. Maybe when we got a little bit older.
We didn't ever camp.
Yeah, not camping. But is there any other stories about living in Alaska, like fond memories you have of living there, or?
Yeah, dipping net fishing. We just had a blast down at Soldotna.
Is that the Kasilof River, I think?
Yes.
Is in Soldotna? You like dip netting?
I just loved it.
Yeah.
I didn't do it. I'd pull the fish. They'd throw the big fish out in the sand, and I kept pulling them back as the tide came in. And but I remember all the kids trying to dip net, and Cindy and Crystal running down the beach with their net and the fish trying to hop out. It was just, it was just a really good time for us.
Yeah.
And Londo and Doris went. And
any other memories of like? I mean, we had good times. I remember at your house. We went over to your house a lot and had barbecues and things like that. There was some stories. You went and took a bunch of kids to Hawaii for a while when we were young.
Took you and the little neighbor girl and Brandon and Cindy for 5 weeks in Hawaii, and I never knew from one day to the next where we were going to be. For the first 2 weeks, we stayed on Cahio Avenue in Emma Rocker's condominium. And I would have stayed there the whole time because it was only $200 a week to stay there. And it was right there off the beach and International Market. And I just loved it there because we walked from one end of the the road to the other. We went to Ala Moana, and I remember when we first got there, we walked from Ala Moana clear down to Kahio, and I bought you a stroller, remember?
Well, I don't remember, but
No,
I
you
know
had
the
a
story.
stroller, and the kids all wanted in it. And
But you said I would squeal.
yeah, I said leave him alone, because they'd get close to him, want to yank you out and sit in it, and you'd squeal, and they'd have to leave you alone.
How many times had you been to Hawaii? Just, I know you came when I was born.
Well, that was the first summer I was there. What, second summer, wasn't it? Because I had nothing to do.
Yeah.
No, it might have been the first summer, because I don't think Grandpa was there yet. And I didn't really know what to do, but Lisa Cambley across the street was 11, a big little girl, but her dad was travel agent, and she went everywhere with him. She knew Honolulu, well, she knew the whole island of Oahu.
And so
She
helped
saved
you out
my
a lot.
life.
She helped you out a lot with the kids and
Well, she
what
did
to
help
do
me
and all
with the
that.
kids, and she tell me how to get off this road and that road and where this and that was, because I was lost. And she'd guide me all the time, tell me where this beach was and that beach. 11 years old. I had no idea what I was doing. And
but it was fun, right?
oh, it's fun. And then
Yeah.
when after 5 weeks I was out of money, I went with $1,600 for 5 weeks, staying in motels and stuff, riding buses, renting cars, and eating. So I mean, I was really budgeting, because every morning, I think we ate breakfast somewhere. Then the rest of the day I didn't really worry too much. Once a day you got to eat a good meal. And then we'd go to the zoo, and I'd pack a lunch. To the park, I'd pack a lunch. We'd go to those ABC stores and get food. And the one hotel, Lisa'd take Cindy and Brandon downstairs at 6 o'clock in the morning, every morning. I couldn't figure out what they were doing. They were going down there drinking coffee and eating all their tray of donuts.
Oh, at the continental breakfast?
Yeah. And I said, what are you doing? One of them come up with some donuts. And I said, what are you doing? Well, you and I didn't go. You were just baby. What are you doing? Oh, we're having coffee. So I went down there, and they'd eaten all the donuts off. There wasn't even any left. They probably ate a dozen of them. And drinking coffee with cream and sugar. All 3 of them. And it was fun. They
that's
just
fun.
had fun, and I didn't even care. I didn't. I just thought, oh my gosh.
So you went to Hawaii a couple times when we were young, or in the late 70s and 80s. And then at some point you and Lynn go to Europe. Right? Now that's got to
Oh,
be
we went to Hawaii a lot.
Right.
Oh, yeah, and your dad went, and he took you. He always stayed at the Edgewater because he got a bargain. And we'd try to stay there, but we didn't always get bargains. So we'd stay wherever we could do well, too. But, yeah, we were over there, and I spent quite a bit of money in Hawaii. And I got home, and Lynn said, well, I want to go to Europe. You promised me you'd go. And you've been to Hawaii. And I said, well, let's go. So we just up and went.
Were you scared to go to Europe?
No, I'm not scared to do anything.
Where did you go in Europe?
Well, we flew over the top 10 hours and landed in London, Heathrow. And we told the cab we didn't know where to go. I didn't have any idea. And he was just flabbergasted. If I was your husband, I wouldn't let you out of my sight. So he took us to a bed and breakfast. And it was East Indian. Everything, all those big buildings were East Indian. They'd have baskets of bread rolls and everything, and thick cream and big cups of coffee and tomato soup and all this kind of breaded tomatoes. But anyway, she and I decided we'd hop a tour bus. It stopped every morning at 6 o'clock. Well, we didn't pay for the tour, but they let us on, and we paid them when we got on, but we weren't included in their luncheons or their food and stuff. But we'd take the tour with them. Then we had to pay our own lunch, and they let us go.
And that was tour around London, see all the sights?
I know it. We went even to the palace and got out and saw the guard. We went to the castle.
Now, what year is this?
I don't remember.
It's early to mid 80s. I remember something.
Well, Colton was a baby, and he stayed with Cecil and Tanya, just a little boy.
That'd
And
be
your
early
mom took
80s.
Cindy. And I don't know who took.
Yeah.
She took Kelly too.
That's okay. So you guys saw London. Where else did you go? What other countries?
We decided. Well, I thought we ought to come home because I didn't really have enough money, and I had one credit card, and she had another, because you couldn't use the same. You never knew what card they'd take anywhere. And so she says, "Well, I want to go into Europe." So we got on the boat and went across the channel to Ostend, Belgium. Got off, and it was at night. Crossed the railroad track, didn't know what we were going to do. Well, there's another little cafe and a bed and breakfast there by the railroad. It was clean and neat. So we got a little room there and went over to this little restaurant and had pizza. We didn't know what to order. Belgium, you know. Didn't even know them. And so we stayed there and we ate pizza, got on the train the next morning, went to Aachen, Germany. And then we went to Munich and stayed. I loved it, the Bavarian. I just loved it. We didn't know what we was doing. We're just so stupid.
So you guys didn't have any plans. You just up and went and just decided.
We'd
while
get
you
on
were
a
there?
train and all through Germany. We get off at Strasbourg and this and there. Every time you get off and on, you're paying another fee. We could have got a pass at the for the Orient Express in Anchorage. Gone everywhere for $30. And we were paying $30 every time we got off and on. We didn't know it. And finally we got on. Stayed in Munich. Went over to Switzerland. And got off the train, and it was a dive where we stayed. Well, these newsmen wanted to take us to the big game. There was some kind of football game or something, and they were going to take pictures and write-ups. They were newsmen. And what it was a date. And we said, "Oh, I think we ought to go." Met them on an elevator, and we ain't going anywhere. We stayed inside. The next morning, we got off the elevator. We were going to leave. They were waiting for us. I said, "Where were you? We waited for you. Where were you?" So we left.
So that was in Germany, and then where did you go to Italy?
That was Switzerland.
Oh, Switzerland. Did you guys go to Italy?
So no, we decided to go to. We went. Well, we went from Munich to Austria. Spent days there, and that was the best place in the world to go. You always want to go to Innsbruck, because you go to the top of the mountain this way. Top of the mountain, here's a little city up here. Everything. It's white and beautiful. And then we went to Switzerland. We didn't go to the right place. Then we hopped a train and went to Paris. And we toured Paris. And I was out of money, so I had to go to the Innsbruck bank and borrow some money.
So then after Paris, you went back to London and then flew
We
out?
flew.
You flew?
We didn't take the channel.
No, you flew from Paris to London. And
Yeah,
then
but
home.
we had to go from what was a different airport.
Oh,
We went to the wrong airport, and they told us that wasn't the right one, so we had to hop a bus. Took us an hour to get the right one. Just made it. Then we went back to London, stayed overnight, and then flew home.
so how long did you stay in Europe? And was that the
2
biggest?
weeks.
Was that the biggest?
That's the biggest trip I've ever
Biggest
had.
adventure trip that you ever took? Yeah.
And that was an adventure. We didn't know from 1 hour what to do. We climbed a little hill to go to a Swiss restaurant, and it was so fancy they tied the bib around us. They picked up my coffee. Every time I picked something up, they did it for me. Until I couldn't even eat. I was wanting to go like this, you know. But we got to do all kinds of things.
Good.
Yeah.
So then, you see your grandkids. You're back in Anchorage. You see your grandkids growing up. There's, Colton, Kelly, Lee Shea, everybody's, and then in '85, Crystal was born, and how did that affect you? Because Cecil was living with you at the time, right?
No.
I'm trying to remember. I remember
He and Tanya hooked up. And then they didn't get along. And then they went back together. And she had Crystal at the Humana. And
Yeah,
then
I
she
remember
went
that.
home, and there was a lot of troubles. Her first birthday, we went over to her house. We were invited, and Cecil cleaned up the trailer. It was really nice, and baked a cake for her. And Tanya didn't come out for quite a while, and finally she came out. She knew what to do with that baby. She knew nothing. Yeah, she tried. She really tried. But the baby was so cute. That was really a cute birthday. Cecil let her plow into the whole cake, took pictures of her, and it was really a fun day. It
Yeah,
was
I
just
seem to
nice.
recall something like that, or one of her birthdays when she was really little.
Yeah.
But she was the youngest one by far at the time.
Uh-huh.
At the time, because I remember there was, Kelly was the youngest for
Mm-hmm.
a while, and then, gosh, it had to have been 6, 7, 8 years before
Yeah,
Crystal came along.
Kelsey.
So then you started seeing your grandkids growing up, and we all graduated high school. Then Colton, I think Kelly was going to be the last one. And then by that time, we all started kind of moving away, except for Colton and Kelly. They stayed in Alaska. James moved away. He was the first one, right, that moved. And Cecil had always come down.
Well, he went to Tonga for a while after we first
Oh yeah,
moved to Alaska.
how did you feel about him going to Tonga?
I think we were crazy because we let him go with Celeste, and we thought that was really great. I mean, the kid wasn't even 12, I don't think, and sent him off. And they didn't have telephones. We had satellite. You could, in Samoa, someplace, I could leave a message. And he was over there, and I knew he was well cared for. I knew that, and I thought it'd be good for him, and it was. But when I wanted him to come home, I send money over all the time in envelopes, and all of it got there but one time, and they thought they blamed it on the Samoans, but I think everybody was trying to get that money. But I was sending quite a bit every month.
But were you excited for him to go?
Yeah.
Because you never, at that point, I'm thinking back in the story, you'd never really had any of your kids away from you like that at that
Yeah,
age.
Sherry came to Alaska when she was 12 for 6 weeks.
Oh, she did?
came with Lena and Bess.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Bessie.
I'll have to ask her about that sometime. So, but James was gone for a long time.
Yeah, he was, and I didn't know when he was going to come back. And I wrote for him to come back, and he didn't come. I never heard. And so I sent something by satellite that I wanted him to come home, and I sent money, I think by satellite, I don't remember, but I was getting frantic. It was 2 weeks, and he came home, just showed up in front of the house. He'd taken a cab, and he was browner than a berry, had scars up and down his legs. Well, we met him at the door, and he stripped everything off and left everything outside, and he showered and cleaned up. But he didn't carry any chiggers or lice with him. He didn't. It was all clean. We washed everything. There wasn't. But he left. Well, he didn't bring much. He left all his clothes, and he had a lot. But I sent a lot of service materials and shirts, and your mom said when she went there, she saw everybody on the islands was wearing my shirts. They came from the Obvious Choice. Yeah, sent.
So that was back in the 70s, and then the 80s was mostly just the families were growing, and I don't remember, besides you going to Europe and Hawaii, any big adventures? Any other big adventures?
No, Grandpa was there for a while, and then he went home, and I'd come down, and you and Kelly went with me one time.
Yeah, I remember.
Was that you?
I remember.
Or was that Shay?
Probably Shay, but I remember going to Hawaii with you once, and it could have been that time when I was really small. I just have
No,
have-
we went to the Hawaiian Village that one time, and that was fancy. We spent a lot of money there, all of us. We stayed in that Hawaiian Village. That's when old Ho-Ho, or what, Don Ho, was there, and
so-
it was fun.
So then in the 90s, back to James. James moved away first, and then I think I was next, or Lee and I were next, and then Brandon. And how did you feel about everybody starting to move away?
Well,
Did
I
you-
kind of knew they wouldn't come back.
Yeah,
And I was getting kind of tired up there. I'd
20 years, right?
gone back to school and I was working my head off anyway.
Oh, yeah. Back thinking of that, back when you were a kid, you always wanted to be a barber, and so sometime in the '80s, you decided to go.
I was 50 years old and went to cosmetology school.
Yeah, I remember that. It was It was on the second story over the Kentucky Fried Chicken
It was
on Benson and C Street.
Yeah, it was
Or-
the Anchorage School of Beauty.
Right. And so you decided that's what you're going to do. And did you enjoy it?
Oh, I had a lot of fun. I went 48 hours a week. Took me 14 weeks to go, and it was hard. It was not easy.
Yeah. And then you owned a couple businesses or worked at a couple different places, mostly down in by your house or near our house in Spenard. And did you have a good time doing that?
Oh yeah,
You like doing it?
yeah.
And then at some point you decided you're going to move to Arizona. You had James.
Well, it was done up there.
Yeah, James was down here. I was down here. I think Ali was about to come down, and so you had people, and then you just decided to come
There
down.
wasn't any work up there, and my business was going way down.
Yeah.
Cosmetologists, they just weren't doing enough, and then I got in an area that wasn't good. If I could have stayed over where I was, but they sold the building, and I had to move out. So I didn't.
Did you want to come to Arizona?
Well, I just was tired of up there.
Yeah.
I just tired. I thought I've done everything up here. What am I going to do? I'm not going to grow. Not going to do anything. And I'm tired of the weather. Slip and slide. It's costing me a lot of money. So Don was done. He's done up there. So
So it's been 20 years since you moved here, and the majority of that you've lived in your house in Apache Junction, and I know for a short time you lived in Gilbert, and you live with James.
6 weeks.
Right.
Chrissy and I lived
Right.
6 weeks, and I bought this home.
Right.
And then Grandpa came down.
Do you like Arizona?
Yeah, I do like it. That's where we belong.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good place to live. I hate the heat in the summer, but it goes. It's either
better
the
than-
cold or the heat.
Right.
So it's okay.
Have you done a lot of things in Arizona? You seen the Grand Canyon?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you did, the big stuff, right? You've been to Utah. So you've traveled around since you've been here, and you've enjoyed your time here. And since you've been here, you've seen great grandkids. So how many great grandkids do you have now?
Well, let's see. I've got 12 grandkids, and I guess I've got 7 great grandkids.
7 great grandkids. Because we've all kind of been around you since the Anchorage time and the Arizona time, so there's not a lot for me to ask you because I've been around you a lot. But is there any fond memories of Arizona or Alaska, or your grandkids or great grandkids or anything?
The Alaska adventure I wouldn't trade because I flew to Prudhoe Bay, Camp Lonely, and Barrow a few times. Went to see the Will Rogers Monument. Saw the tundra of flowers, strange birds. Went to the Navy lab. Went to the end of the bridge. I got to see the Northern Lights. I've seen things people never even dream of. And
So
I've been in horrible blizzards up there.
So you consider yourself lucky to have seen all that?
Oh, yeah, and blessings.
Good.
It wasn't a coincidence. These aren't coincidences.
Yeah.
So I'm just, boy, I've seen a lot. And I've been to Mexico. I've done a lot. So, I love Alaska, but I'm not going to live there anymore. I'll go up and then visit Lynn and stay a couple of weeks and visit Cecil, but I'm not going to live there. I don't think it's for old people. I just don't. There's nothing for me. I don't, care about putting a coat and hat on in the winter. Even if it's not that cold, I have none of that. So I like it here.
Good. All right. Okay. So I'm going to ask you some questions, and they're pretty straightforward. What was the happiest moment of your life?
I don't know. I had a lot of them.
A lot of them? Okay.
Boy, I had a lot of happy.
Who was the most important person in your life?
Probably my husband.
What important lessons have you learned in life?
To be congenial. To be patient, which I'm not.
What are your proudest moments in life? Or what is the proudest moment of your life?
Having my kids.
Probably your happiest too, right?
Yeah, I think so.
What do you miss most about the way things used to be? From your childhood or your teenage or early adulthood?
I miss all my old friends and visiting and quietness, and
You think it's too busy nowadays?
it's so busy, and you don't stop and reminisce about anything. Oh, that was fun. It's over.
And on to the next thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless you take a big trip and you can sit down and visit with people. You know.
Who is the most memorable character person in your life? Doesn't have to be relative, or I mean, could have been like who. If there's any one person that stood out in your life, as just
My husband.
Grandpa Don.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Well, what were some of the things that made him a character?
You never knew what he was going to do. He wasn't scared of anything. He wasn't scared. If a caterpillar went over a cliff, he'd just drop a blade and think it was going to climb itself up again. And he wasn't scared of airplanes. He wasn't scared of
Are
anything.
you scared of airplanes?
No,
You scared of anything?
no,
That stuff doesn't bother you?
no.
Do you remember any great stories or legends about your town or people in your family? Like any legends in family legends or anything? Or weird stories or anything like that?
No, Don told me one about coming through the canyon over at the Bighorn. And I don't know why, he was over there with the Bischoffs, I guess. They were cattle people. But he came through that draw and he thought the devil was after him. He could see pictures of the devil on the wall. And I laughed and I said, "Were you scared?" "Yeah, I was scared." I said, "You're never scared." He was never scared of nothing, but that did scare him. I don't know what was going on. He was really loping through that draw in the canyon, I guess.
Did you have any nicknames growing up?
Babe. My dad called me
yeah,
Babe.
I remember that. Even
My uncle
when
and
he would
Aunt
visit
Vicky.
us in the 80s, I remember him calling you that.
I was Babe.
Yeah. He gave everybody nicknames, though, right? He called us Snoop and...
Yeah.
Were you voted anything in high school to be like class clown or...
No. After I was married and had 3 little kids, I was voted queen of a float, Relief Society float. I had to wear a formal. My sister was the queen's. Every year in high school, she was queen of snowball or junior prom queen or senior ball queen. She was the queen. I wasn't.
Were you happy for her, or were you a little jealous?
Never jealous.
Happy for her.
I don't have a jealous bone in my body.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like you guys grew up in a very jealous type family. You said early on that you guys all supported each other.
Oh,
and,
yeah. Oh, yeah. We didn't fight. It's hard for me with my girls because they bicker. I just can't understand why the people bicker. I don't understand it, and everybody does.
What was your favorite job ever?
Well, I did like retail. I've always loved.
Like the country western shirt shop, or when you worked for that
Now
other?
that one wasn't
No?
because it was too much pressure, and I didn't. I didn't really like them all. I did like a lot of the times. I did like the corral store. I liked the elite shop, my own shop. I liked that a lot. Yeah.
What was the scariest time of your life? The most scared? Were you scared for one of your kids or
Yeah,
yourself?
when
or
I
your
almost
family?
lost James. He was a baby and he fell over backwards into a basement on the back of his head. He toddled into it and I didn't know there wasn't a railing. And he had a sweatshirt with a hood and he fell over backwards. My neighbor said, "Whoops, he went over there." She said, "You better get him." And I turned around and he went over and she says, "Oops." So I picked him up and his eyes fluttered and he went shuddered. And a doctor lived next door, but he was up at the hospital. And I called him Mrs. LaFush called him. He said, "Tell her to get him in a car and get here now." I got him up there. They revived him. And I didn't get to stay in the hospital at all night. They kept me at his crib by the nurse's station and kept waking him up. Next day, I took him home and he was fine.
But
Didn't
that
even
was
have
the
a-
most scared you ever been?
Oh my gosh, I thought he was dead. I did.
Oh.
He fluttered. He was go like that and then he just went out. He was gone. He was limp.
Oh.
That's because didn't have him tied to me, see. You don't pay attention, that's what happens. And I always did, you know.
If you could, knowing what you know today, what's something you would have done differently back then as far as professional life, work life? Right, because we're all going to have some sort of regrets or things like
I
that, but that's
think-
not what I'm
When we were in the T-Bar C store, and this man came in, he owned a ranch in Cody, but he worked on the slope. He almost begged Don to come up and go to work then. And I wanted Don to do it, but he didn't want to, and Grandpa wanted to go, but the guy wouldn't hire Grandpa, and he should have, because he'd owned a trucking company. But I really wish we'd have gone then and forgot all this mess. It was too hard.
So you wish you would have bypassed the
corral stores.
the corral stores and just went straight to Alaska and saved yourself during the boom times, saved all those years going towards that instead.
Because I didn't want to live in Cody.
that's-
I did not want to live in West Yellowstone. Billings, yes. But I didn't get to do any of that. But I learned a lot, like business, and so we learned a lot. But we didn't come out ahead.
Right.
We never did. And we never were supposed to.
No,
We
I think that's a good answer. It's right. It's something that you wish you
We
would-
just never were.
yeah.
We were just
It
supposed to
would have been more
learn.
beneficial for you to leave at that time than to
Yeah.
go through what you went through.
Yeah, but we had to go through it.
Yeah. Out of all your relatives, who's your favorite relative ever?
Oh, I had an Uncle John. I loved him dearly.
And is
And-
this your mother's brother?
Oh no, he was my dad's brother-in-law.
Oh, okay.
And he went to the Marines when he was 43. He was in one of the Indian Sign Language.
Or the Navajo talking, the
Uh-huh.
code talkers?
He looked like an Indian, but he was claimed to be German. John Boyd. He was, and Bettina was like a sister to me. We were really close. Yeah. Yeah.
So this is from James. He asked, "What's the most important lesson you've learned in your life?"
Just keep working harder and harder. Achieve. Never stop achieving.
He also asked, "What's the biggest difference you see between today's youth and the youth of your generation?"
Today's youth doesn't even think the same as yesterday's youth. They don't think the same way because
More
of television.
Yeah, because so they don't think the same in a more negative sense,
Yeah.
right? Like common sense or
They're not-
manners or things like that.
And they're so young.
Yeah.
They're not mature. They don't
They
grow
don't
to be.
mature like they used to.
Oh, no. A 15-year-old could go and work his dad's farm with his dad gone someplace. And a 13-year-old girl could go take care of a family. She could even be a midwife. My grandma started at 13.
Yeah.
They're dependable. And but the kids today,
So what I'm hearing is that immaturity is coming
they're very
later.
immature, but they're smarter.
Oh.
Today's youth is much smarter.
Maybe smarter but lazier and more immature.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but really they are smarter.
Yeah.
And they're quicker.
Again, another one from James. What is one of the character traits that you think has continued throughout your family line? I think what he's asking is there something like it is that the Kelseys or the Averets were known for? Probably the Averets, since it's your side of the family or your mom's side, that people were ornery and like it just kind of never seems to go away throughout the family line, or is everybody generally funny or something like that?
Well, the Christensens all could be very serious, hardworking, but they always wanted to have fun. And they were very nice to each other. And they didn't want to jangle and fight, ever. The Kelseys that I know were a tougher breed of people because I think they needed to be in their life. I think that's what they were supposed to be. The Averts, they were just strong, stalwart people that had big families and had to grow in the Mormon church. They had to bring families in. So
It's kind of a little bit of everything, huh?
there's everything.
Yeah.
And I guess that's what I had to do.
So we answered a couple of Cindy's questions already. She wanted to know how you met Grandpa, which we knew was on Halloween. And it was, we know the specific date, right? It was Halloween night, and it was the year before you got married, so it had to have been 1949, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty cool. A lot of people probably don't remember specific dates. And then she also wanted to know what it was like growing up on a farm, and I think we talked about that. So she also asked, how has the world changed for you over the course of your lifetime? Like,
Well, it's never really changed my thinking about things and people. Times have changed a lot.
Like
But
what's one of the biggest things you've seen that stands out as from the time from 1950 to 2016? What's like the first thing that comes to your mind?
the TV.
So technology?
Technology came just so fast. It just came right now. Even medicine. And the Second World War that brought in the good medicines because they had nothing to lose. They were trying all these things on people that were probably going to die anyway.
So overnight, when you were in your early teens, right? Because you're thinking you're 13 years old in 1945. So overnight, between 1945 and the time you got married in 5 years, there was a big, huge medical change.
Oh, yeah.
In technology and for drugs and
Oh, everything, because we would have lost Sherry. The new drug came out right now. Well, they don't use that drug now. It's too strong. But at that time, she needed that strong drug. Yeah, and it was
but
powerful.
10 years before it wasn't there.
Didn't even have it. It came out when she went to the hospital. Viridantin came out, and it was a form of sulfa, yellow sulfa tablet, and they were $1 a pill.
What's the most amazing? This is my question. What's the most amazing technological piece of equipment that you see now? Being 82 years old.
X-ray.
Oh, really?
They can see everything. You get a picture of things. They had X-ray back then, but it's nothing like they've got today. They got MRIs and scans.
What about something more for entertainment purposes, something more common, right? I mean, X-ray is common, but for the everyday person, what's the big like? Is it would television what we're watching on TV
yeah.
or cell phones or something like that?
See, television's really important to me.
Yeah.
It's really important to me because I can wake up in the night, and even in a hospital, you can turn your TV on any time, and it's a friend.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what, you can watch anything you want, and it's a friend. But you're learning. You can turn to a channel and learn. So.
This is from Lynn. She wanted to know what your favorite job was growing up. I think we talked about that a little bit, but you said owning the store. What was the name of it?
I like the elite shop. It was
Shop.
fun because I put on shows and things. And
She also asked what the happiest time in your life was, and I think we talked about that a little bit, but any
Yeah.
other times? Remember just joy?
joy.
Yeah, where you had joy in your life.
Oh, a lot of joy in my life. Oh, yeah, even sad times you do. Oh, yeah. And everywhere I moved, I liked it. I can move anywhere and get along. I can do that.
What was your number one, this is from Lynn, what was your number one favorite vacation ever?
Oh, boy. That Hawaiian was really fun. But we went on that cruise with everybody, and that was fun, too.
A couple years ago, you went with James and Cecil and Lynn and my mom.
Yes, but one of my most favorite is Texas. I
Oh,
always love that Texas house.
The lake
I don't
house.
even know why I like that
The
lake house.
Dankworth Lake House.
I love that lake house.
It's
I
fun.
thought it was mine. It should. Old Ed Dankworth wouldn't think it was mine. It was his family, but I thought it was mine. He'd laugh at me, but I thank him all the time for that house.
Okay, good times and good memories there.
Oh,
We had a lot of fun there, right?
I love that
you had
house.
Grandkids, older and younger grandkids,
Yeah.
and great grandkids, young.
And we took walks up the beach,
Yep.
and we'd go to Ballinger, and then one time some of us went to San Antonio, but we got to go on the boat and out on the dock and the fireworks. I just loved that place. I guess that was one of the happiest. And I like the Mexico. I do like Puerto Penasco.
Your annual trips to Mexico?
Yeah, but you got to stay out of the old town now.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you to describe either in one word or a phrase of these people in your life. So I'm going to name a name and just whatever the first word or phrase that comes to you. And this is not to be mean or anything like that, just the first word, just because it's about you, right? My grandpa, Donald Kelsey.
Amazing.
Lynn Beamer.
Intellect.
Sherry Mokofisi.
Social butterfly.
Cecil Kelsey.
Calm and collected. Calm.
James Kelsey.
Matter of fact.
Cynthia Peterson. Cynthia Kelsey. Cynthia Peterson.
Talented.
Okay. Brandon.
Kind.
Jared.
Everything.
Alei. No, actually, Colton's next. Colton.
Busy.
Alei.
Thoughtful.
I think Shay's next. Shay?
Pretty boy.
Kelly.
Hardworking.
Crystal.
Intellect.
I think Jake is next. Jake?
Achieving.
Charlotte?
She's a social butterfly, too.
Joe?
Serious.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Peanuts. And Ava.
Gracious.
Good, so those are your grandkids. Is there any other... well, I guess we can do great-grandkids, right? We can do Maya.
Smart.
Jack?
He's just got a lot of things, too.
Will-
Sweet boy.
William?
Thoughtful.
Lily?
Beautiful.
Samantha?
Intelligent.
Allison?
Busy.
Benjamin?
Big.
Trying to run down. I'm not missing anybody, am I? Am I missing anybody?
Sarah.
Oh, Sarah. Sarah should have been up there, yeah. Man, a long time ago.
She's talented, too.
Yeah. Before we wrap up, I love you.
I love you, too.
We all love you. And is there anything else, anything about your life that you'd want us to know about?
I think you know everything. My life's pretty much an open book. I don't have secrets.
Well,
I don't want secrets. It is what it is.
how long do you think you'll live till?
Maybe 90.
Couple more things I'd like to ask you about. If you could, in a word or a phrase, some things that maybe affected your life. Because we didn't want to go into too much detail about certain things, but alcohol, how's that affected your life?
I absolutely despise alcohol. I have no patience with it.
Yeah. What else? Is there anything else you want to do with your life?
I want to travel
You want to travel some more?
and visit with all the kids, yeah. I like temple work, but I'm getting too tired. It's a lot of work for me to go to the temple. I might go do some initiatory, but I maybe won't.
Oh, I know. What's your favorite food ever?
I used to like tomato soup the best of everything. And I don't really worry too much about food. But I like dumplings,
What about
chicken,
here's some.
salmon. Yeah.
What about what's your? These are just some random things. What's your favorite movie ever?
Gone with the Wind.
Who's your favorite actor ever? Actor or actress?
I do have a favorite one too. I used to like Bill Holden. He was one of my favorite. Clark Gable was. Today I like Vin Diesel. And I like The Rock.
And The Rock, yeah, we all know The Rock.
I like The Rock.
Growing up, I remember there were specific television shows we used to see at your house all the time. But what was your favorite TV show ever? Even today. It could be today, it could be 40 years ago.
I like The Big Valley. I like Bonanza. A Carol Burnett show.
I always remember watching the Jeffersons at your house. I don't
I,
know
I
why.
like the Jeffersons too.
And Archie Bunker.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are, we didn't watch them in our house, but we watched them at your
Oh
house.
yeah, I liked them.
I can't think of
I
any-
love Carol Burnett. She's the funniest person in the world.
Yeah.
And talented.
Do you have a favorite book? Or
Um,
types of books?
I liked, I liked Les Miserables, but I don't think it would be my favorite today. I did. I like a new modern one is These Is My Words. Cindy gave it to me. And I love that book. And then I like all the Gerald Lund books. I really like them.
What about music? Because music was a big part of your early life.
I like country western, but I do like classics too. I like songs like My Hero. I used to sing them. And the Desert Song, I sang that. I sang in Naughty Marietta. And I sang... let's see. You Belong to My Heart is one of my favorite. And
Anything more current that you like?
No.
No, you just like the older stuff?
I listen to... I just like the older stuff. I listen to Radio with Sarah, and they're cute little songs, but I don't understand them. Can't understand the words. I like the music, okay, if they're bouncy. I like them, and I don't like the new country western stars, all of them. I like some of them, but that Blake, what's his name?
Blake Shelton?
I like Blake Sheldon. Yeah. I like some of those people, but I don't care for Katy Perry and Beyonce and a lot of them I don't care for.
Anything in closing you want to put in audio on tape for the rest of your family?
In clothing?
In closing.
Oh, in closing? Oh, I just love all my family and wish the best for them. And I don't think they really have the problems they think they do. Because things work out to the best and you have to be patient. Things are not going to happen at the best now. And if everybody doesn't do what you want them to do now, they will. They will. They'll all come back to church. They'll all come back to their families. Because all that work's been done for them in previous times. And you have to work for it still. If you don't do it now, you'll get it in the millennium. It will happen.
Okay. All right. Love you, Grandma.
Love you too. Thank you.